Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the July 16th version of the Johnston County Planning Board. We appreciate everyone being in attendance this evening. It looks like we have a large crowd tonight, and we've certainly got a full agenda. So thank you for being here, and thank you for working with us to get through this agenda this evening. As is our custom, we'll begin with our Pledge of Allegiance. I'll ask Mr. Crenshaw to lead us.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is approval of the minutes from the June 18th Planning Board meeting.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve by Ms. Holmes, second by Mr. Crenshaw. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, the minutes are approved. Next on our agenda are subdivisions. I'll remind everyone that the vast majority of land in Johnston County is zoned agricultural residential, which means you can farm it or you can build houses on it. As such, it's not the purview of this board to determine whether a subdivision is appropriate for a given area, only that it meets our codes and ordinances. Given that we are the final approval body, this is a quasi-judicial hearing. So if you're going to give testimony on any subdivision, whether in favor of, opposed to, or if you just have questions relative to a subdivision, please make sure that your testimony is relevant and competent. And I'm also going to need you to be sworn in. So anyone that wants to speak as it relates to any subdivision, please stand and raise your right hand. Do you affirm the information that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and this is your solemn affirmation?
I do.
Thank you. Mr. Marr.
Yes, sir. First up is Ricky Norris Track, June 2024. Owner and developer of Strickland's Crossroads Land, LLC, surveyors Dalton Engineering and Associates. Its location is Strickland Crossroads Road, just west of Hannah Creek Road in the Banner Township. It's served by Banner Fire and Benson Rescue. It's 15.98 acres, 11 lots proposed. Johnston County Public Water, individual septic, and traffic count for Strickland's Crossroads Road was 1,400 vehicles per day, and that was in 2021. This portion of Strickland's Crossroads Road does not appear on the comprehensive transportation plan as needing improvement. In regards to direct driveway access on Strickland's Crossroads Road, major subdivisions located on a local road shall be designed that there shall be no more than one direct residential driveway connection per 500 feet along the same side of the local road unless it can be demonstrated that the proposed subdivision cannot be physically designed, that no reasonable alternative exists, or it would create an unreasonable hardship without a corresponding public benefit to prohibit individual driveway access onto the local road. Also from the Johnston County Land Design Manuals on developments creating 4 or more lots where no easement exists and where the parent tracts have direct road frontage, an easement shall not be allowed. The development must dedicate a right-of-way meeting the requirements of this section. A waiver may be allowed if determined by the board that in pursuit of this section a hardship is created upon the property that provides no benefit to the safety, welfare, and quality of life to the public. You'll remember this came before you guys on March 19th. It was tabled after lengthy discussions, mainly over drainage and stormwater issues. In May it was withdrawn, and it came back with less lots and a new design. I have provided the previous submittal in your map packet in front of you so you can compare them. And I do believe that there is an updated map that might be proposed by Mr. Dalton tonight in regards to some comments that were made during TRC.
Okay. Yeah, as I recall, there was a significant amount of testimony given relative to this subdivision. Again, I'll just remind everyone we do have a full agenda this evening. I think this was the same board that heard that testimony, so certainly want to get any testimony in the record from that standpoint. But we don't need necessarily lengthy conversations about issues that were discussed at the previous public hearing. So I appreciate your help with that. Thank you, Mr. Moore. Any other questions for staff? All right, who would like to be heard on behalf of the Ricky Norris track? Yes, sir. I'll just say it so everybody else hears it. If you give us your name and address, please.
Jerry Dalton, Dalton Engineering Associates, 446 East Main Street, Clayton. I guess it's good to be back again.
It's good to see you again. It's been a while.
Yeah, And we did based on comments that were made. We felt like we had a pretty good project the last time, but in view of the comments and also based on what we think is a better design, we come back with what you see on the board. We've come down from 18 to 11 lots. We've changed the drainage patterns. We've added a lot of things that will improve the drainage and actually decrease the runoff based on what we've done here. And I'll go through that briefly and entertain any questions. There's a lot I got to say, but anyway, in doing this, we have also, by the way, also had DOT review this design to see if they would be willing to approve it, all other things being equal. And they said they did. We talked to a guy with DOT who's also a member of the fire department. You know, we sort of vetted that with him. He said, you know, based on what he sees, the fire department wouldn't have a problem with it, based on the length from the entrance to the entrance into the last lots. So he said that probably would look good as well. But what we have done is made it all accessible on an internal road system that meets the requirements that were just mentioned by Todd. And we have divided up some of the runoff. By the way, the runoff patterns for this project have not changed. They have always been running like this. They are still running like this. And any runoff generated on the project goes into the patterns that have been used for, who knows, centuries maybe. But anyway, water goes in the same direction. We have not interrupted water. We not, and one of the things that DOT talks about immediately is, have you changed the water basin? No, we haven't. Everything goes in the same direction. We have on this plan already identified a drainage easement. And as you know, I was not here, but that easement is over the top of what is considered to be subsurface drainage that comes through the site. And I've even looked at that, but I'm not even going to talk about it because that has been completely taken out of the picture. I did go out there and look at it, dug holes, found it, and have a lot of knowledge about that, but I don't think it's relevant for this project now. The roadway system that we have and already reviewed by DOT sort of splits on the crown of the road. And what we propose is taken from the crown northward to an existing ditch that has, by the way, at our request, been cleaned out and maintained some since we were here. So that ditch does work well, and I think it'll work well, but half the roadway will drain toward the ditch to the east to a blue line jurisdictional stream that is there, always been there. Well, so nothing about that has changed, except for the fact that there's a small portion of the upper part of the property that we're taking over to that jurisdictional stream instead of having it sheet flow across the property. Now, what we have done also is not only as required by the county is put, say, a swell on every third lot line. We put a swell, we propose a swell on every lot line to break up the water as much as we possibly can for each lot. As it ends up, there's only about 1,500 feet of drainage, including the roadway, that goes in front of each lot and down a swell toward the back to an existing drainage feature. The first 6 lots, 1 through 6, drain into that feature. In fact, the other 5 lots, 6 through 11, by virtue of the swell, some of that goes over there, but what is left on the lot runs laterally based on the contours to the east and is caught by each one of the swells. Now, I know there was a lot said about the amount of water that's generated that goes down to what you can't see on my map. It's somewhere down to the south and southeastern part of other lands. But I just would like to remind the board that from Eagle Road, there is a ditch that has been there a long time from Eagle Road down to Strickland's Crossroads that captures farmland and water coming onto Eagle Road and brings it down and puts it under Strickland's Crossroads roads. There's a 36-inch pipe there that takes all that water. The water that is off this site that is accumulating in the southwest is coming from that 36-inch pipe, most of it. That is not shown. That might not have been mentioned previously, but that 36-inch pipe feeds the jurisdictional feature that you see, totally, and without coming through this site. And the water that we're generating, half of it is also directed toward the jurisdictional feature. So that will go into that area. Any flooding in that area, by the way, the impervious area that we have for this total project is less than 2.5 acres. That includes the roadway, that includes up to 8,000 square foot of impervious for each lot, which will not be used. That much will not be used, but if you were to use the maximum 8,000 and still comply with the 15% or less, you could have a home site that had 8,000 square feet each. If you did that, which will not happen, there's less than 2.5 acres of impervious for the whole lot, including the roadway. And part of the roadway, half the roadway, we're putting in the jurisdictional feature. So we've reduced the runoff that has appeared to be problematic tremendously by using this design. And there again, I would say we haven't changed any drainage patterns. They're the way they've always been. That's where water always runs. I've got a swamp behind my house. I wish it wasn't there, but that's the way water has always run. So I deal with it. And this was what we've got to do with here. So, but I can answer the questions. I think that we have done our due diligence by decreasing the lots from 18 to 11. We have redirected some of the water that would have been coming across here to a jurisdictional feature that is there for that purpose. And we have put, I'm going to tell you, based on my knowledge as an engineer, the amount of water that's going down each lot line on a typical rainfall will not even get to the end of the channel because it's that little. We're only picking up 1,500 square feet in a ditch in front of each lot, 100 foot long. I will tell you that there's no significant impact to the stream based on this design. You cannot minimalize it any better than we have done. So I'd entertain any questions, but that's about all I know to say. We've done everything we can, and I feel totally confident that it's going to be as good as any subdivision you have in that area.
And then you said you already spoke with DOT?
I've got, it's in the package.
Okay.
I've got and if you want it right here it is. I've got a memo from DOT saying.
Yeah.
I'll take a look.
Because I said my concern is that driveway right across from Eagle Road
Yeah.
of access.
Okay, you
So-
had a package. It's a different package, but that's the
Okay.
letter from DOT.
Okay.
Sorry.
Division 4.
Okay, this is the map.
Yeah.
Because that's my, because that's what I didn't know if we needed to, I feel like I almost need to line it up with lot 7 and the road, but that was just my,
Oh, it's all.
So for,
Okay, you got it all
So
set on.
it's
Mr. Chairman,
offset.
for
Yes.
clarity's sake, I think the map that he just handed you came in after the packets to the board were already distributed.
Okay.
okay.
So therefore, protocols would be that they present this new map
Okay.
at the meeting, at the hearing.
It's a new
So if
map.
you'd like to,
Yeah.
we can throw it up on the
Line.
screen. We have to do it with
Please.
document.
And this has been accepted, by your office.
We haven't done a comprehensive review, but, I mean, from what we see on the surface, it is definitely an improvement.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you,
He's got a copy.
Sorry, I thought you had that in your pack.
That's okay.
So it's moved the driveway down.
Driveway out.
Yeah.
And we've separated the drives to meet the standard, 500 feet.
bigger.
We put it
So
in
you
a
have-
50-foot easement.
They have
29 and
100
10.
foot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's way down this way.
Yeah.
This is swell.
There you go.
Yeah.
See?
Fair.
Oh, here, you can
Okay.
pass that down to them.
So
Is that
it is-
Debbie's gonna want
Oh, we
that?
split both of them, okay. So between 1 and 2 and 10 and 11?
Yep.
No,
No,
but it moved
it
it.
gives the distance.
Yeah, there was a question about separation of the driveway. Would we put it out more than 500 feet?
Okay.
It's about 900 feet.
Okay.
Did you say when you started your impervious area, was more or less than the original design?
Well, it depends on how much each lot uses. I said the maximum impervious area that is available to us is 15% outside the environmental sensitive overlay district. If each lot, what I'm saying is if each lot were to use 8,004 square feet,
Anybody else want to?
it would still be within the limits of what
They
is
did.
allowable.
But seeing the lot number.
Also, like I said, the total impervious area, including the roadways on this whole project, is less than 2.5 acres.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
This one.
Anyone else like to be heard in favor of the Ricky Norris tract? Anyone with any questions or in opposition to the Ricky Norris tract? Yes, sir. If you give us your name and address, please.
Good evening. William Samuel Godwin, attorney. I represent Bruce and Glenda Adams, who live at 2865 Hannah Creek Road and own the 40.8 acre tract directly south of this parcel. You can see it on the map at the bottom. As
Right
mentioned,
behind it. Right behind it, correct?
yes.
Okay.
And as mentioned, we were here in March before this board for previous design by this applicant in the same property. At that meeting, which was, I believe, almost an hour, this board heard testimony and exhibits from my client and other adjoining landowners. That evidence raised essentially genuine concerns about the amount of runoff, both downhill, over land, and then underground in the what has been presented as a pipe that is outlined as a drainage easement on this new map from the left side to the south of this parcel, and also various stormwater concerns. After hearing this evidence, the board basically echoed our concerns and advised the applicant the need to see additional studies and materials addressing these runoff concerns, stormwater calculations, and further information, especially to the extent of this ground pipe. I believe one of the members had wanted to see specific inlet and outlets on the draws, elevations, and the pre and post calculations of the pipe in the plat. The board gave the applicant the option to table it. They did until May, which they ultimately withdrew the application. Through that application and the one for consideration tonight, I've submitted numerous requests to the Johnston County Planning Department to see if these additional studies, materials have been submitted. And to the best of my knowledge, as of this date, they have not. And my point in raising this tonight is essentially exactly that. My client and I are prepared. However, this board wishes to proceed. As mentioned last time, our presentation today, due to not being able to review these additional studies, would be substantially similar to the one last time. And in the interest of this board's time, which is very precious, ultimately it's the same presentation that this board reached the ultimate conclusion to really need to see further additional studies, which this board, based off those concerns as a legal body and a finder of fact, tasked the applicant with. Ultimately, the burden is on them. I have the understanding that one of the adjoining landowners has retained an engineering expert. I know he would love to see and review those studies. My client, Mr. Adams, would also like to see them so we can evaluate exactly how they would affect him and the amount of runoff on his property. And like I said, if none have been conducted, I'm prepared to do the evidence. Due to the existing concerns, we would like to renew our objection and recommendation, absent viewing those studies, that this is rejected as proposed. And ultimately, whatever this board would like, if you like Mr. Adams, he's been sworn, he's present, he's prepared. I have the exhibits from last time. If we like to stipulate to their admissibility, I know the board might have them in their packet, but I've seen them before, and they're kept the same exhibits as last time from the planning department file. But however y'all wish to proceed, I would like to ask some questions to the engineer for the project. But if you would like to hear Mr. Adams and the other landowners.
I think given that this is a new case, certainly worth submitting those into evidence for sure. I'm happy to take any questions that you've got, and after we hear from anyone else that'd like to speak relative to this, we'll try to get you some answers.
Okay. I move that respondents exhibit 1 through 13 into evidence. And here y'all go. Those are the same exact ones as last time. And I do believe there's other landowners that were given notice that would like to speak on this. And like I said, Mr. Adams is prepared to do the same thing in the interest of your time. If they want to go first.
No, you go ahead and let us know any questions you've got, and then we'll get to them.
Well, I just really have questions to Mr. Adams and the engineer on cross-examination.
One is a licensed attorney in the state of North Carolina, it would be appropriate for him to examine witnesses.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, if you want to, you can go ahead with that now, if you'd like. That might address some of the questions that other folks have.
Okay.
That's fine with me. I just want to make sure you can be heard for the record. Like a staff's good with that.
Get Mr. Adams on camera, so he doesn't have to stand.
Want to stand?
He's willing to go to the podium, it's okay.
If you could pass this, Mr. Adams.
This is right. Suzanne, if you can't get, kind of just.
Okay, my apologies. Good evening, Mr. Adams. Can you state your name and age for the record?
Bruce Adams, 74 years old.
And where do you live?
I live on Hannah's Creek Road.
And how long have you lived there?
Been there all my life.
And you received notice for this hearing today?
Yes, sir.
And how often do you go on your property?
Probably every day.
And you've gone since receiving notice very
Yes.
frequently?
Mm-hmm.
And you've took pictures?
Yes, I have.
And Mr. Adams, I just want to give the board kind of a summary of how we got here. I don't have that map, but the map that you saw earlier, could you point out your land in relation to the proposed development?
Okay, the property I have is behind it, all the way across.
And to that track, to the upper right-hand corner, what is in that parcel that says Ricky Norris?
That's woodland.
And is that where several streams?
Yeah, there's a stream that's been dug out sometime or another. I didn't know it was there because all this started coming around. It's probably about 4 foot wide. It starts up here at Strickland's Crossroads Road, and it runs to my property line, and then it just stops. And our stuff is just not set up like that.
the water kind of just stops there, and it takes it a long time to go through, and actually that place is getting wider. It's taking in some of my field space, because it's still an active farm.
And for the board, I believe Exhibit 2 through Exhibit 8 is the two waterways for reference that flow from that onto Mr. Adams' land.
Waterways, okay, you got one on the right, and you got one on the about middle ways in there.
And does the,
Can I ask him something real quick before you keep going so I don't forget? On this one's colored, so you've got this one,
Yes, I got that.
and there's another one somewhere over here?
There's,
That's that drainage, right?
yeah, it's where the drainage pipe runs out.
Okay.
I've got two pieces of land there. One piece of land's got 6 acres and something in it. The other one's got 10 in it.
I was just trying to get it right in my mind.
Yeah. And, the waterway runs into that, I call it Stream 2. That's the one next to the 6-acre plot. And, the land is sloping all the way down there. The water's gonna always run through there. And it's gonna run into my fields, is what's gonna happen. Especially a hurricane rain or something like that, or a storm. Thunderstorm or something like that.
and for the board as well, I believe Exhibit 9 through 13 is the waterways that flow from that drainage easement, so to the left side of this parcel.
Yeah, it shows it right there, through those two fields right there, it comes through there, and then it's right there, and then it goes through that other one,
And
which got marked in the blue.
does all those waterways connect on your property?
Yes, they do. All the water's gonna come my way.
And can you show, using that laser pointer, where they kind of feed out from your property?
It's the, okay, trying to figure out exactly where I'm at, right in there. Then it comes on down through here. And there's a path right here that goes to these two fields right here. What happens when we have the storms and all, it washes everything out.
And if you could zoom out on that image a little bit. So once all that water flows from your property, where does it ultimately end up?
Okay, it all ends up in what we call the King Stewart Pond. I think it's a nursery now. And this is this pond right here. It runs right through here, and it runs right through there, and comes on back right here. This pond next to I-40.
And that's I-40 right beside it.
Yes, it is. It runs under I-40.
And where the I-40 overpass is, when do you remember that bridge being put in on the property?
I-40 overpass.
Yes, sir.
Where down? You said overpass, right?
Is that the top up there?
Right here. Okay. Oh, it was done when 140 was built, and it's a real high area, and it circles down right here to House Creek Road, and it's a man-made hill is what it is.
And did the kind of runoff increase when they put the bridge in?
Oh yeah, it's changed. We actually took out some insurance, flood insurance. We've had water to come up on my side to the steps to our house during it was a hurricane rain we had back a few years ago, and one of the last ones we had, and I've never seen that happen before. But all the water is generated down that way, and it comes across, and it's going to cross my property right there. This stream came down, so, and actually there's water from Highway 50 that runs into this stream. And there's another stream up above it that runs down side of my field that runs into that stream. All the water in all this area in here goes to right here.
Currently without any development there. Is that correct?
And has any buffers been proposed between the two tracks?
No.
And ultimately, what's your concerns through this development if it would happen?
I think water's gonna run off my property. That's what I think's gonna happen. It's gonna come across right here. I mean, there's nothing to stop it. It's downhill, and this Ricky Norris land is just like a basin, just about. It's gonna hold water. And over the years, this place right here got wider, and the one down here has too. The water's kind of just, it has to go in the ground somewhere. You know, then it'll run on through to the pond right here when it gets hot enough.
And based off our presentation in March and different questions and exhibits, like I said, I don't have copies of them. I submit Mr. Adams to any further questions, but at that point, I have no further questions from Mr. Adams.
Any questions of the gentleman? Thanks, sir. And sir, you said you had questions of the engineer as well?
Yes, and the engineer, I believe last time we kind of waited until everybody else in opposition, but if I wanted to
Yeah, you can go ahead right now again. This may help answer some questions that others have.
Mr. Dalton. And if you could you put that new map up so I could kind of reference it? Good evening, Mr. Dalton. How are you?
I'm good.
You've marked on the right side of the proposed plat a riparian buffer to accommodate any runoff or impacts of the subdivision, correct?
Yes, there is runoff from the subdivision that will go into the jurisdictional buffer.
And that's located in that woods tract that's still labeled as Ricky Norris. That's where the buffer goes through.
Yes, on that part of the property, but it goes through his property, by the way, all the way to the pond and further on down. It doesn't stop at his property.
And that water flows north to south with the downhill.
Yes.
And would this be substantially increase the flow from new construction of the subdivision in any way?
No. And I think I've already heard that he's had floods that go up to his steps. So he's not without flooding now. And the amount of development that's going to be applied to the land based on that project is minute, considering the size of the drainage area for the riparian buffer. That's hundreds of acres.
And those lines from the I-40 bridge, those are kind of topographic maps showing the elevation.
Yes, that's showing the embankment or the cut field for the highway that was put there when it was built.
Yes, sir. Do you have the application you submitted in front of you?
I do not.
I believe I have a copy. Did you get one?
Yeah, I did. Did you get yours?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm ready.
And as indicated, your application, that buffer, which you call the tree area, goes continues flowing as you stated. Ultimately, what you have is Stones Creek.
That's what I'm saying. That's right.
I think that's right.
And in your application, you indicate that Stones Creek is large enough to handle this additional runoff.
I do.
Isn't though that Stones Creek is located miles across I-40 into the Blackman's Crossroads area?
It could be, but I still say it's large enough to handle the approximately 8 to 10 CFS that's going to be generated on this project.
So once that water flows from Mr. Adams' property, as it currently is,
Mhm.
and goes into what has been called the King Stewart Pond.
Okay.
It's flowing either under or over I-40 to Stones Creek.
Well, it's surely not flowing over I-40, so I would say under I-40.
And has any, you stated that you made inquiries with the DOT. Has any inquiries been made with the DOT in regards to that water flowing under I-40 at that point?
No, because I certify that the amount of water that gets into the pond below, the stream below, is still within the limits of acceptable. I don't need to take it all the way to Stones Creek to know that the impact is not that bad.
But before it gets to Stones Creek, it flows under I-40 and throughout multiple different tracks.
I guess if you have, yeah, I would say so, depending on how far away it is.
And as indicated in your application, the drainage, runoff, and stormwater and erosion studies will be submitted at a later date.
Always, we have to adhere to the ordinance of Johnston County Public Utilities for stormwater and erosion control. Anything that we do and produce as a final set of plans will be looked at, hopefully approved, or commented on by the county.
And we were here in March for
Mm-hmm.
the same property, but a different plan.
Yes.
And at that time, this board requested to see those additional materials addressing the significant runoff on and around this parcel, correct?
I'm not sure I know what we did not supply, but all of that will be taken care of in the final plan set that goes to the county for, and then they will also review that at that time to ensure that it complies, along with DOT, the fire department, and others interested in it.
So as requested, no additional studies on the runoff or stormwater were ever submitted to the plan as well?
I did go out and look, and I would like to speak on that because you brought up the fact about subsurface drainage as being part of the initial comment package. I don't know, I didn't know that was going to be talked about. I could have talked about in this. I didn't know he was going to bring that up, but I did go out there and look at subsurface drainage. You don't look at subsurface drainage the way you do with surface drainage. And I went out there and even made an investigation because it seemed to be, we got a catch-22. One property owner's concerned about subsurface drainage being interrupted, and the other one is concerned about the surface water. They're two different things. When I started my career with the federal government for 10 years, I was an area engineer for the Soil Conservation Service. Do you know what that is?
I've heard of it.
Oh, okay.
I'm not
Good.
an engineer.
Well, I guarantee every farmer in here has heard about that. And I was responsible for designing and assisting with the installation of subsurface drainage. It has nothing to do with what goes down that waterway. There are two different types of design criteria for those. However, because there was such an interest, I went out there and we dug 3 holes and found the corrugated plastic pipe. And in order to try to understand why people were talking about all the water running in the pipe down there that was going to be interrupted, dug 3 holes, cut 3 corrugated pipes, and I have yet to see any water running through those pipes. There was no water running through those pipes. I went a couple of days later after a huge rain, no water in the pipes. So what we have done, as I said earlier, is come up with a map that takes that out of the question. That shouldn't be questioned. That shouldn't, in my mind, even be discussed because we're not impacting, touching, or doing anything to disturb subsurface. But I will say, and I would like for you to put up that map that he had, and I've got one like it as well, that shows the drainage areas that have been mentioned, where his water goes. Can you do that again? That's all I've got. That's all I want.
Put that on there, Jerry.
This.
That right there?
Yeah.
Up here?
If you can. Oh, I can use that. I can refer to my map and use that if you don't mind.
Yes, sir. Before we do that, I just have a few quick questions.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I'm sure the board would gladly tender it over to allow you to get further explanation.
Okay.
on that.
Okay.
Just have a few more points.
Okay, sure. Sorry.
And as requested, were any stormwater calculations made?
They were for our plan design, yeah, that he will see ultimately, or they, the planning department will see ultimately when we send in our plans. We've done that. We've done, in fact, I probably have some of the nitrogen calculations with me for impervious area. That's why I was able to speak with confidence that you could have as much as 8,004 feet on each lot without breaching the design criteria for a subdivision that's not in the environmentally sensitive overlay district.
And they've been submitted with the planning department?
Well, we haven't done that yet. We haven't finished the plan set yet. They will be submitted and reviewed, commented on.
With that pipe, you had mentioned what you had done with the pipe.
Mm-hmm.
As requested, was the elevation calculations of the inlet and outlets and the draws of that pipe made?
Yeah, I've got it, and I would like to show it to you. You won't believe it. The people were talking about might surprise you. People were talking about how surface water got in the pipe, and I beg to differ on that because I would like to show the board. I've got a number of photographs that the inlet on the subsurface drainage is 2 feet above ground, you know, from our property line. And I don't know how subsurface water can be mentioned. And I would like to show the board this is the inlet to the subsurface drainage pipe. If you can explain to me how that subsurface water plays into that conversation, I'd like to know.
So are you saying it
That's a
would have to actually come up like 2 or 3
Yes,
feet
it
to go
was.
over the top to get in it?
Yeah, and that would get in that house and go in the roadside ditch. That should just not even be a topic of conversation.
So this is
Is
what,
that right here?
at like what?
Where is that on this map?
That, may I have your pencil? Point to, when they were talking about the subsurface
Right.
drainage inlet, it's right there.
So this line.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, let's,
You got it,
Dalton,
man.
if you'll show him on that map where you just pointed
Okay.
in terms of the,
Where that curvy line is.
I show him it's 18 inches above ground.
Yep, and comes down.
and you can
Yeah,
show that
that's it.
picture as well.
Yeah. And so that's it right there at lot 1, right? Yeah. So then comes, and then that's the pipe underneath that comes all the way down.
Yeah, but there was a conversation about surface water getting in that system, and it cannot.
Mark it on there. That's right there. Right
That's it right there.
Okay.
there.
Oh, nope, we're off a little bit. It's right here.
Oh, okay. All right, same lot. I think I remember this,
no.
because there was a gentleman that came
Okay,
and
so
spoke.
here. No, it's
Okay.
it's on the new one now. It was not on ours.
Oh, all right.
All right, so it's running.
So it's these same contours there.
Yep.
Something
Actually,
like
it's a little off.
that. Yeah, okay. All right, so it still comes through here.
It does. It comes all the way down through 6.
So, all right.
It comes out right in the corner of 6.
All right, thanks, sir.
Yeah. Okay. All right, and it feeds into this swale here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any further questions of Mr. Dalton?
In your opinion, would the presence of this drainage easement, as on the new plat, impact in any way the ability for the lot builders or the people who move there in any use of their land?
Well, no, that's why we put it in an easement, so it can't be used.
Yes. And would it interfere in any way due to that pipe being in the ground for 50 years, any structural ramifications to the ground, for septic reasons, erosion problems, anything that would come from being in a home for 40 years on that property? Do you foresee any of that?
Absolutely not. As an engineer, knowing what the easement's for, there will not be a septic system in that close proximity, and there will be no building in that close proximity.
And that's all I personally have.
Okay, thanks, sir.
And I know there's other people that
Mr. Dalton, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Can you testify as to the runoff coefficient used to determine the volume of water from a use, particularly the runoff coefficient of a residential development versus a farm field? And if you don't know the exact number, give me, which one is larger?
Actually, you'd be surprised. It is pretty close, depending on what you use the farm field for. There are some residential developments that have a lower coefficient than farming. So it really depends on what is planted there and how many months of the year it lays fallow and things like that. But typically, both of them range anywhere from 30 to 50 to 55 or somewhere in there.
So make sure I'm understanding what you're saying is, depending on the way the farm field is used, a residential type development could generate less volume than a farm field could, or again, depending on the use, could it be a very similar volume of water for residential
It could be
use?
very similar, I will say that. But it could also be less because a residential development has more year-round vegetation on it typically than a farm field does.
Okay.
So if you average it throughout the year, it's better to have a good stand of grass than it is to have stubble from corn or whatever.
Sure.
So it does vary. I mean, but it's very similar.
Okay. Second question I've got for you, are any buffers required in our ordinance between like uses?
No.
Okay. Thanks, sir. Any other questions of the gentleman? All right. Thanks, sir. Anyone else like to be heard as it relates to Ricky Norris track? You got something else you want to say? I'm sorry, I should have asked you. If you
Yeah, you know, I'm going to stand here until it's proved, but I mean, you know, I do want to talk about what he said as the land features.
If you got additional testimony you want to give, I'll let you give it right now.
Well, I tell you what, based on the fact that I know we've done a good job on this thing, I'm going to call it quits and let you do what you need to do.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to be heard as it relates to the Ricky Norris track? Yes, sir. Give us your name and address, please.
My name's Kevin McLam, 9328 Strickland's Crossroads Road. Was here last time with you guys.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to pass out just a couple of pictures, if I may.
I'd like for the board to know.
If you'll give us your name and address too, I'd appreciate it. If you'll give us your name and address too, just for the record.
I live at the property. You see where I live there. I'm 74 years old. I've been over 53 years, and I'm not here to get filed or anything of the above. But I was there when those three geniuses came out to cut that pipe in two. I begged the guy not to cut it in two. And the reason, where's the gentleman at?
Thank you, sir.
The
Appreciate it.
reason you did not see any water, the third time they cut into that,
Okay.
third
Yeah, if
time
you'll.
that they cut into that pipe, somehow it's been crushed. I've been to that pipe, it's not running water. I went to that pipe on Easter Sunday, that pipe was discharging 20 gallons of water a minute.
Okay.
On a good day, it could be discharging 50 gallons of water a minute.
We got video of it running before that pipe was crushed too.
Okay.
So I hate for a guy to come up, I'm not an engineer, I don't have a lot of education, but I'm not stupid. I can see if water's running in a pipe and running out. And that's what I told the guy that was digging. So they went down and cut the pipe in two, and it's been crushed ever since. I don't know if they intentionally or not intentionally.
that pipe's not running water.
So the inlet to that pipe, we received this image of the inlet to that pipe, and you can see how far, but is that the inlet to that pipe?
It's not the inlet. The inlet's way up north. That's the inlet of the pipe.
Okay.
So it runs down. All this is a junction box.
The junction box,
We
right?
keep the dirt cleaned out, so it continues to be able to allow the water to flow through.
Okay.
All this is the junction box. The water's never gonna get this high. It's only gonna get grade level.
Sure.
I just
Oh,
want to make sure these are on the record.
Can I ask him a question while you're on that?
yes, go ahead.
On this, whereabouts is that junction box? Okay.
Yeah,
I think I have it.
It's right here, right? And there's,
Let's see.
wait a minute. Right here? In this picture, is it right there? Debbie?
I've been working with that junction box for 50 years.
Yeah, I feel like I can see where the junction box is. I'm trying to make sure that I'm clear on where the inlet is.
Because that's it right there.
It, maybe on that area right there, there would be.
I brought my own this time.
Is the inlet right here?
You might be the first
here?
speaker that's ever done that, brought their own laser point.
Set record, setting.
Is the inlet up in here?
Let's see.
Not what he just showed me.
Sir, if you could get closer to the microphone, that'd be
All right, that junction box is right there.
Okay, and
Okay.
where's the inlet to the pipe?
So it starts right on the edge of the Dunn property right there.
Okay, so it runs
Across.
parallel to the road to that junction box and then southeast?
Used to could see it before we put it in the voluntary ag district.
So we were in the wrong
Okay.
area.
Yeah, I can
over.
turn that off on mine,
Right
I
here?
It
think.
runs across right there.
This property line right here.
You can almost see the line
Okay,
from the, right there.
Yep.
That's the pump house. That right
that's
there
the
is the
junction
district.
box.
So
Okay,
it starts right here and comes all the way across.
okay.
And I've got video after this whole thing started. I went ahead and just started taking documents. I could bore y'all to death with videos and notes. But that pipe was running. We got video of it running out the discharge the day they cut into it.
So the plat, well, give your testimony and I'll ask a question.
Okay, I got a question too.
You know, I don't want to take up too much of the board's time. I decided to go back to Google Earth and just went back a few years. On the second picture, I mean, that was a tall tale story for me. If you look at the Dunn track and you're standing across the street looking at the Norris track, if you look to the right, I tell you what, Braxton, you put that in. That don't show as good as your pictures, but you can see how this field's washed out, and it washes right down through here, comes across in between Ronald's property, the house and the trailer, and blew that field out right there. I mean, and I literally set this when I was sitting in the truck this afternoon. You can lay that up there, Braxton. That's not the scale, but for me, I just lined up the property lines. Drag it down just a little bit back so I can see them. Right there's the property line, I believe, if you look at the plot map, unless it changed the plat that we had, that lines up with it right there. So there's your houses and your properties that are going to be built from lot 1 through 4. Those are the lots that we're concerned about. Those are the lots that I feel like that if they flood out, they're going to come knocking on my door. Want to know why their lots are getting flooded out. So I had some stuff to talk about, but I mean, that right there to me just tells it all. I mean, I don't know how you're going to stop that without putting a ditch in, putting a basin in, piping it all around. I mean, at some point, like you said, is it worth it at this point? Kind of like in the last meeting. I mean, sometimes it just, to me, this site just doesn't make sense for subdivision. I mean, 5 through 11, I mean, I don't see any problems with it. Those first 4 sites right there. And there's a timestamp on all these pictures. I think there's one in there that doesn't have it, but it was. And look, guys, this happens a lot. This ain't just something that happens once. I just kind of today made a few notes. January 13th, 2013, it flooded. July 19th, 2020, flooded. August 15th, 2020 flooded. October 6, 2022, that Google Earth shot based on the timestamp. May 14th, 2024, we got 2 inches of rain and it flooded. May 18th, we got roughly 2.5 inches. It flooded. I've got video, those pictures that you see right there, I got video on May 18th walking around with the water over top of my extra tufts flowing.
And while y'all are thinking a little bit, I guess I'm a little bit senile. I've kind of been told all of my life that you cannot really back water up on someone. And if y'all would just listen to me with a little bit of common sense that I think I have, that pipe, when he says, basically it does not need to be under that. In other words, for the area and for the acreage that's up above that is sucking that water and taking it to a discharge. Now, if it's blocked up or stopped being used, then that land's going to be saturated. So when we get 2.5 or 3 inches of water, there's no sponge to hold it. So it's going to shoot right on down on Bruce. And, I've been a neighbor with Bruce for almost 54 years. And it's, I'm not here to talk about the developer or talk about the engineering firm. I'm just talking about what I see here and what happens.
We live it.
And I live it, and yes, it floods me out, but to me, to say that it's not going to dump any more water on, and they've come down and cleaned out the ditch a little bit, but, it didn't even wash the straw.
No, I got video of the straw. After the heavy rains, it didn't even wash the straw out the ditch.
Your water just doesn't flow that way. It comes down through.
I've got, you can come off the top side of this hill right here. This, let me get my bearings here. This is kind of like a ridge. So when it rains, that hole they got dug right here, I got video of water just pouring into that ditch, coming off the top side of that hill. And if we can go back to the GIS map, Braxton.
And we don't want to bore you to death, but we do have an.
I'm just trying to state the facts. Zoom out just a little bit.
Could explain it better than I can.
This right here is a ridge.
Yeah.
So what it is, you're taking all this water. I think the batteries are dead in this thing. It basically where the dot just was. That ridge, all that water just runs down towards Strickland's, and never hits the ditch. Then it just turns and goes that way. And obviously you can see where it comes off the Dunn farm from that Google Earth shot. Google Earth just kind of captured it and made it.
And that's your property in the middle of everything? Right?
It's Mr. Ronald's property, but I'm the son-in-law.
Okay.
Oh, I want that light. No, apparently both batteries are dead. He's hooking us up here. There we go. Thank you. This is Ronald's farm, all the way down.
Okay.
So, again, it's not here, I'm trying to find the right words to say. I'm trying to throw caution to the wind to the developer, first of all. And these homeowners, I just feel like they're going to be buying something that's going to be saturated all the time. And the biggest concern to me really is the not repercussions, but the lashback on us. Because you're going to tell a man he can't build a barn out there, and if we leave that pipe in the ground, what if something happens to it? Who's going to maintain it? I got water, right now I got video every day, pictures every day, measurements, and it's just water standing in that right there. It don't flow anymore, it just stands there.
And I say,
Even with no rain the past 40 days.
and I cannot say.
Well, it finally dried up, yes, but it will. But when you do get rain, like when you get the heavy rains, it stops. It used to move. It would go on down and go on out. Now it just stands there, and it takes forever to go down.
When was this picture
Sir, did
taken,
you go
Mr.
out
McLeod?
the day that they, I was standing there, so when you said that, I don't mind telling you, it bothered me. Because I was standing there, and I had a witness.
wasn't there the day it happened, but I went 2 or 3 times later.
Yeah, and you did because it was crushed. I don't know if they intentionally or what.
All right, y'all can address me with questions. I'll get back to you. And you let me questions and I'll get you answers, so thank you.
She asked what date it was.
I asked what date this picture was taken, and Mr. McLeod said it was April the 5th.
They dug it on April 5th, come back and got the equipment off the farm around the 15th. So
This is the same day that they dug this out, and there's water here?
They dug it out,
I know it's April 5th is when they dug it, because my wife, she called me, she said they were out here digging it. I'd have to go back and look at my pictures at the timestamps, but that, I could tell you exactly. Well, I won't hold the board up for that, but I mean, it's within a few days of them digging it up. And
Danny was there and Junior Parker was the one that was running the little excavator. And Ricky Ennis came down there with me and we had a good conversation about that topic. And then before my blood pressure got too high to live.
Don't let that happen. All right, any other questions of the gentleman?
One, what's the size of the underground pipe, do you know?
6 inch.
it starts out as 6 inch.
What's the length that it runs? Do you know what length?
750 foot from.
Does it run to the tree line?
Yes, sir, it does.
You said approximately 750 feet?
Around 750 foot. And then the whole total pipe is somewhere around 1,100 from the start.
6
the
inch
inlet.
ain't doing nothing.
And it drains just as much of Mr. Ricky's land as it does mine. I mean, that water, it just soaks in out there.
So when it's not crushed, or when it was operating, was it operating properly
Yeah.
before?
Yeah, we got a video of it running
So
through the
you
pipe.
said it always
But would it keep
stands.
the water off your property?
Yes, ma'am.
It keeps it drained down, man, to about,
It's
this
a-
pipe is just deep in the ground, and the water runs into the pipe, and it goes out, and then when the water level is down low to that pipe, then it kind of quits running, and then when you get a rain, you've got a big sponge there of 2 or 2.5 inches of dirt to soak up water before it starts running off.
And they did it back in the day so they could work the land. So they didn't have a ditch, they could actually work the whole land.
So if the pipe is fixed, then we don't have a problem with the water that you're talking about.
It would keep it from standing in the inside that culvert there, yeah. It would continue running. That don't really, in my mind, and I would like for it to be fixed. I think they ended up accidentally breaking it right there at the culvert, because when water runs off the hill of that hill down, that ditch never fills up. It runs, but when it gets to the center of the field, I walked out there and it was just standing in water, because I couldn't figure out why our ditch wasn't running.
This is
So I walked out there.
solid pipe, it's not
It
perforated.
started out terracotta, but they broke it with a combine some number of years back. And
But it's solid pipe.
yes, sir.
No, it's drain pipe. It's
Is it perforated or is it solid?
perforated PVC plastic.
It's perforated?
Yeah.
Well, it starts out terracotta on that picture that you got and the one that you got. When it was originally installed, the owner told Ricky Norris that, Ricky Norris told the developer that he thought he had been in there 70-plus years.
How many?
70?
I can't tell
You
nothing
said
about that.
That's terracotta.
No, it's been on the farm as long as Ronald's been there, which is
So
over 50.
that's corrugated plastic?
No, ma'am, that's
No, that's
terracotta.
terracotta.
Okay, I was gonna say, 'cause it sure
It
don't look
starts
like.
out terracotta,
And it ends up as.
and it's wherever it got breached at. That's him when y'all dug it up in the middle of the field. Sorry, I didn't mean to address him.
25 or 20 years
Was it
ago,
terracotta?
crushed it, and they went in and cleaned it out with the pipe.
So I want to make sure I'm clear. So the pipe handles some of the drainage coming through that area, but there's also drainage that goes over, in storm events, goes over land, exceeds the capacity of the pipe and flows over land. That's the pictures you've got here. Okay.
Really, in my mind, the pipe's not there to capture any stormwater. All that pipe does is drain that land down so we can mow it, work it, so they can plow the fields and work the field, the Ricky Norris track.
Okay.
That's all that pipe was put in there for,
Is to drain that.
was to drain the land after the storm runoff.
The storm runoff still primarily travels over
storm-
land,
correct.
across those lots in the general vicinity of that gray area.
It goes back to that one I had the lots, whatever, numbered 1 through 4.
So that's hence the reason for the surface and the subsurface concerns.
Right.
And,
Okay.
and I just went back to Google Earth.
I'm
and
gonna get back
started-
to you in just a
And I just
second.
went back to Google Earth like as far back as it let me go, 1990 something.
Okay.
You can see that same track doing
Yeah.
that.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Dalton, anything you want to add to that?
I'm going to make it fast.
Okay.
I think he touched on it. There are two different purposes for drainage. Subsurface drainage is for farmland drainage. Been doing it for years and years and years. And by the way, a 4-inch flowing full only takes 1 CFS. It's not going to drain a lot of land. And then we got the surface drainage, which I see very vividly in that. Therein lies the fact that we need a drainage easement in that property. I mean, we can develop it so that it runs more. I want to leave hands off as much as I can, but there's a drainage easement for the purpose of surface drainage.
And those are the drainage easements that flow parallel to the property lines to catch that water coming across the property.
Right, and I think at one time the developer had said, and I think he may have talked to this gentleman here, that he would be willing to put, for the subsurface only, the surface water, we can't change the path of that. We have to have a drainage easement to help maintain it and keep it going and make sure it's working. But as far as the pipe in the field for subsurface purposes used to raise crops, and I think it's more for him than it is this project, because they're not going to raise crops on it. But I think he had mentioned the fact that he would be willing to put a pipe around the field in order to ensure that if anything happened to that 4-inch corrugated pipe, that there would still be an outlet all the way to where the existing outlet is now.
Okay. So willing to make a condition to put a pipe around the field to redirect the subsurface drain.
The subsurface. But the surface drainage needs to, and the only way you can handle that is through an easement.
To your
and
drainage
maintain the easement.
along your property lines.
There'd be an easement for each one of them.
Right. Okay.
And it's your testimony that the water going down each property line will not make it all the way to the end of the...
Well, I'd say there's so little. I mean, each lot drains about 1,500 square feet. And by the time, and you can see on the map that each one of those swells has a different length, because we fall short of getting it into the easement. We put it into the easement and stop, don't cut into the easement. So, but with 1,500 square feet of calculations of runoff for 1,500 square feet is not long, and it will probably go into the ground before it reaches the end on a typical rain.
Right.
You know, but on a 10-year storm, no, it'll run down there some, but it'll get in the easement. That's where it's directed to. But yeah, you can make that a condition. Easements on both, and he'll assist in redirecting the pipe around the field.
Wouldn't they need to fix what they've currently cut? That he actually saying it worked, and then they did something to it.
Well, when we went out there, that terracotta was already busted, and there was a lot of dirt around it and in it. I'm sure that he's telling exactly the truth. I mean, he lives there. But 60-year-old in-ground 6-inch, 4-inch line has a lot of silt and sand in it over time because of that. But it still flushes if you got enough head on it. I'm not saying it's not working, but yeah, we can put an easement on it, repair it, take it around the field, do whatever for the subsurface drain. It'll work better,
Okay.
even better.
I guess my question would be the drainage easement pipe maintenance, because it's going across all those lots. So what if something happened to it?
We have to build a house on top of it.
Right.
They can't build a house.
They're going to redirect around.
It'd be redirect around the property
He's already made
lines.
an easement.
It would barely impact any land other than adjacent to the property line. And any maintenance would probably be turned over to the HOA in that respect.
Any other questions?
Did you say this was proposed as an easement, that drain, that pipe?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's noted on this
Yeah,
map.
Right.
it's on there.
Oh, okay. It's not on our map though, right?
No, ma'am.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, there's an easement there for the subsurface, and it happens to be for both because we located that where we think is on the alignment of the subsurface. But if the subsurface is redirected around the edge of the field, we still need an easement there for the surface drainage.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else like to be heard as it relates to this subdivision? Yes, sir. Give us your name and address, please.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Patrick K. Smith. I am a professional engineer. I work for Soil and Environmental Consultants, Raleigh, North Carolina. Mr. Chairman, I've been engaged by Mr. McLam and Mr. Wood to really kind of review the project as we know it. Obviously, there's been a number of changes. I was engaged in the April timeframe, shortly after the original meeting where this case was first heard, and then since then there's obviously been a lot of information that's gone back and forth amongst the design engineer and possibly with the county. A lot of that, as far as I can tell based on testimony tonight, hasn't crossed anybody here's desk, at least up at the dais there, and I certainly have not seen it neither, nor have my clients. What I wanted to do is, since there are, obviously, you have a pretty full agenda tonight, I'll try to keep it brief. What I would like to do is just hand out just a quick summary. It's only 5 slides. I'll blister through them to make sure that, that your time is well used.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies first. Thank you.
Sure. So by now, everybody is certainly familiar with the property and the adjacent properties and so on, the general drainage patterns here. What I'd like to do really is hit a few highlights. So I have had the opportunity to be on the property a number of times, okay? Also, some other folks from our shop have been out there. Those visits occurred in the April and May timeframe. Here we are a few months later. While inside, I had a chance to walk the property. I also was lucky enough to get onto Mr. Allen's property and kind of took a quick tour of that, got a feel for the lay of the land, and also just really what the existing conditions are out there. And I have to say there is a lot of standing water that already exists really close to the surface. The ditches down there are full as a tick, as they say. And so it's always an area that is typically going to be wet. As you come off of the Ricky Norris property, the slopes kind of flatten out and then it kind of goes to the ditches, and those ditches, based on what I observed in my site visit, tend to hold water for a significant amount of time of the year. So if we could switch over to the next slide here. This obviously, as I said, you're pretty familiar with what the lay of the land is. I really would kind of like to echo the concerns that Mr. Godwin mentioned earlier, and that is based on my review of the video of the previous hearing and my discussions with my client, there were some pretty specific requirements that were asked by the board that the developer and their engineer and others associated with the design team come back and provide not just to the board, but also to the county staff, as well as to others who were involved in the case. Thus far, based on the little bit of testimony that we've heard from Mr. Dalton, I have not heard a lot of information specifically about what that investigation was and what those findings were. If they have been reported to others, then certainly, as I said, we have not heard those. There obviously is a new site plan, which we picked up on in the last few days as it was posted on the board website. And then, as we found out tonight, there has been yet another iteration. And certainly we understand that that's the process. You got to make some changes. And obviously the adjustments in the road frontage and the driveways were in response to a comment that had been provided by county staff, which certainly makes sense. If we jump down, I really have broken kind of my concerns on behalf of my client down into 3 areas. On-site runoff, so things that are associated with the development parcel, as we know it, the Ricky Norris tract, and then off-site drainage, which we'll talk about a little bit more here in a minute, and then also basically the subsurface drainage, which has been kind of touched on here or there. So I don't know, it's unclear to me whether or not, obviously Mr. Dalton said he had visited the site. I don't know whether or not they've had the ability to observe the adjacent properties, whether they've spent any time on my client's property or whether they've spent any time on the property to the south, okay, Mr. Allen's property. If they did, in particular Mr. Allen's property, they would certainly be able to see that there are already what I would just say in general water issues there. Now, of course, it's flatland, right, and water tends to stand. You have a lot of connected ditches, but those ditches are really full. If you look at, if we can go ahead and flip to the next slide here, That's just an example of kind of one of the ditches out there. You drive around, it's interconnected ditches, small ponded areas, culvert crossings, whatever. But those start right at the northern end of Mr. Allen's property, and they continue to go down pretty much until you go underneath Hannah Creek Road, and then eventually down to 40, based on my observations. And so I'm curious about whether or not any of that was done or permission was requested to see that property, as well as what's going on upstream on my client's property. The other thing that I guess I was expecting to see before now was some type of a preliminary stormwater plan. The board had asked for some specifics with regard to information on surface runoff, calculations, et cetera, which Mr. Godwin mentioned, and we haven't seen those. So while I certainly understand, that the engineer has taken, again, a relatively preliminary look at it, and I understand the process, this one in my mind is a little bit more unique in that we already know we have what you might categorize as a drainage problem. Now we're trying to figure out how that problem basically gets worked into a project that's proposed immediately downstream. As my client expressed, they don't want this to kind of come back and the finger pointed at them based on surface runoff concerns. One thing that did stand out to me, and and I think Mr. Godwin touched on it, is that it does appear to me that the stormwater statement, the most recent one that was submitted to the county as part of the package y'all have, it does seem somewhat contradictory, because if you look at the statement as it's written in there, it says, as Mr. Dalton said, that the downstream channel could, quote, handle that. Well, I honestly don't know, as a professional engineer, what exactly that means. I can look at things and say, hey, I think, certain things are reasonable, but without any kind of a thorough analysis, when you specifically have a site that is a downstream property that's already what I think we generally agree is prone to flooding, the ability for somebody to just kind of look at it and say, I think it'll handle it, when if you read further in the stormwater statement, you'll note that they have specifically said they have not done any of that analysis, and as Mr. Dalton mentioned earlier, that analysis won't be done until sometime down the road. Again, I get it, I understand it, that's part of the process, but this is not a normal site, okay, in my mind, okay? So that's something I guess I would just ask folks to keep in mind. If we can maybe just jump to the next slide. This really talks about off-site stormwater. Again, we've already talked about the information that we would have expected to have been provided to us to digest and also to the members of the board to digest. We haven't seen that. There was some talk in the first meeting about the ability or the desire maybe for the developer to put a bypass channel. At the time they were looking, as I understand it from listening to the video, it appeared to me that was really more concerned about surface runoff. So the water that is coming across the properties that are they're owned by my client and then flowing onto this property, and how they might divert that. Because if you remember in the original design, it had kind of, I'll say, much more standard subdivision, kind of intersecting roads, lots all formed around it, so on. That seems to have gone the way of the dodo, which probably makes sense. But then, of course, the question is, if there is no bypass for those surface flows, then what would be the plan? Couple of comments that I mentioned on here, including the reference to a proposed drainage easement, that is certainly something that we think is critically important if the project were to go forward, because obviously, you have this drainage path which has been there, for a significant amount of time, and clearly it's conveying a lot of water, and clearly it's already causing flooding conditions. We would want to make sure that's done. One thing that I did not notice in any of the documents that have been shown today, including the site map that Mr. Dalton provided, was any kind of a proposed grading plan. So what we see on that map, a grading plan map.
Okay.
So what you see on that map is just the existing contours. And so my question is there going to be any grading associated with all those various lots, or are they pretty much just going to be built at grade, and so the lots will pretty much blend to whatever the particular contours are out there? I don't know that, but my question would be, if there is going to be grading, how is that grading going to change the general lay of the land, the topography, the surface runoff, and then is any of that grading going to extend out into the area where that existing drainage feature, like that I'll just call it, in general, cuts down through the property, okay? And then I think really the last thing I would want to touch on, if we can just flip one last slide, is the configuration of this drainage. It's often referred to as a drainage tile, a blind ditch, depends on who you want to talk to. But at the end of the day, it's a perforated pipe that's in the ground that's intended to pull in groundwater, okay? And as Mr. McLam mentioned earlier, and I guess I've heard anecdotally from my discussions with my client, that in not so distant past, there have been equipment out on that field on the Ricky Norris property, that because they broke the tile, that caused saturated soils because the site wasn't draining, and they literally sunk a combine out there, and it took them a significant effort to get out of there. That just goes to show you kind of what a great balance that tile has been able to keep out there. Stepping back from it, that pipe was put in there for a reason, and common sense, as was indicated earlier, kind of would tell you. The people who farmed that land for all those years said, if we put that pipe in there, it'll keep that water down for a sufficient amount of time to allow us to do what we do for a living, and that is generate crops and have an agricultural practice. And so it certainly has been a longstanding functioning piece of that landscape, if you will, okay? The concerns that we have about any manipulation to that tile, because at this point, I think we have reason to believe that it's certainly not functioning the way it did a few months back, probably shortly after the last meeting that this case was heard. And so that clearly is telling me that even though we have not had very much rain, as we talked about earlier, in recent weeks, it had a function. I don't think anybody here is disputing that. We need to figure out a way to get that back into working order, regardless of whether this case moves forward or not. There are a couple of things that are a little bit maybe peripheral to that, but I think important to point out, is that there is a lot going on in that area. You have septic systems, you have foundations, and then you have just, general lawns that are out there that people use every day, getting in and out of their houses, going to the cars, whatever it might be. And so when we have an extended period of wet soils, which we will as we kind of get into the wetter season of the year, then as long as that drain is left in its as far as we can tell, non-functional condition, then I think there's a reasonable chance that we're going to have some issues out there associated with that. That's for the short term. Long term, I think the major concern, and Mr. McLam indicated, that they have and that I have, is that there is a significant amount of water that is draining down through here. And especially when those soils are saturated, that's when your runoff off those upper lands, which it's the Dunn Farm, which is immediately to the west of the properties that we're talking about here, and that's roughly 8.5 acres or so. The drainage out there is pretty flat, right? So depending on how you look at it, when I walked it, I kind of looked at the rough drainage area on the county GIS, and you still have a fairly significant amount of drainage area that is coming to there, cutting across between that house and the trailer, and then getting onto the Norris property. And so when the soils are wet out there, and you can see from the aerials, they don't farm those because they're just too wet to operate. But when you get a heavy rainfall with those wet soils, then that water just sheets off because, as Mr. Wood said earlier, there's no sponge there. There's nothing to soak up that initial rainfall. And so when you get a heavy rain, it hits that water, it hits that land surface, and just starts running off. And it goes obviously shooting right down onto the Norris Tract, which we think, short term and long term, is likely to be a problem on that. Okay. At this point, I don't have any other comments to make. There's obviously a lot of information that we would love to have. I know we're early in the process here, but I guess my expectation was that here we are with a delayed process, and I would have thought that we would have gotten a little bit more input on that to digest. So we really have probably more questions than we have answers at this point.
Thanks, sir. Any questions?
I had a question. With you being with soil and environmental as well, if the drainage was moved, do you think that would still affect the flow and being able to absorb the rainfall and all the other water that's being used now? Like if the drainage pipe was moved from, that easement was moved to around the property as it was suggested?
Well, yeah, if I'm understanding your question right, there's a couple things there. In my mind, if you're going to have the subsurface drain and a surface drainage or swale, if you will, over it, for simplicity reasons, it seems to me that those two should be in the same location, especially if you're going to have a permanent drainage easement that would be put over there. So it would seem to me that if you kept the subsurface or its tile in its general location, repaired it, made sure that it was fully functional, okay, and that there was a means to protect it so that people didn't get in there and muck around with it once these lots are all sold, that you would want to have that surface drainage over it as well, keep people out of that area altogether. the idea of diverting the surface flow, would be pretty complicated, and I think this was mentioned at the previous report, or the previous meeting, in that you'd have to run it down the western property line, which you're kind of going to high ground there. Again, we're not talking, miles high, but there's still a pretty decent rise, and then turn that corner, and then round it, and then dump it into the downstream ditch. So that would be problematic in that you're basically, the further you go south, then you're cutting a deeper and deeper ditch. And then again, that's going to be one more thing you're going to have to maintain. Water is naturally flowing down that swale based on the existing topography. If there isn't an intent to change the site topography dramatically, then it would seem that would be the simplest way to do it and the simplest place to keep it. So my indication will be keep them together, unless there's some other factor that I'm not aware of, and protect it as best you absolutely can. To that end, I believe it or not, had a whole other section here I was going to touch on, but I decided to leave it out because it's kind of getting into the weeds, but it was brought up earlier. We don't know what, if any, evaluations were done on this property. Okay, now, I'm an engineer. I deal with dirt and water and stormwater and ponds and dams and flood studies and all those kind of things. But another piece of our company handles on-site wastewater application, and I know certainly Mr. Dalton knows what we do. He's known our company for a long time, and so one of the questions that I had early on was, what are the plans for on-site wastewater on this? The most recent plan that we had seen, it may not be noted on the one that was presented tonight, just indicated that they were going to be conventional septic tanks and drain fields, which may be absolutely fine, but what we don't know is, one, if there has been any kind of a soils evaluation on this property, the Ricky Norris property. If so, who did it? Was it done by the county, which I understand still does some of those evaluations, including preliminary ones, setting up for permitting, or whether it was done by a consultant. I know it certainly wasn't done by our shop. If it was, then I wouldn't be here having this conversation with you. We'd have a conflict. And so we don't know that. We don't even know if at this point the soils on that site are suitable for wastewater application. And that, we always recommend to our clients, get that done early so before you bite off on the apple that whether it's going to work from a wastewater standpoint. We don't have any indication that it won't, but we certainly don't have any indication that it will. Maybe there's been a study that's been done on the property by a soil scientist. Maybe the county's looked at it, but we don't know at this point. But to that end, if these are conventional systems and they're gravity driven, that would mean there'd be the house and there would be a septic tank. Downslope from that would be infiltration trenches, leach field, whatever you want to call it, and everything flows by gravity. Flush the toilet, eventually winds up in the leach field. If there is not sufficient soil for those wastewater systems, okay, on any given lot, then there are sometimes allowances to put your wastewater onto somebody else's lot. That just means that you now have to have an easement on your neighbor's property, or it might be 3 or 4 neighbors down. They might have all the good soils, you might not have any good soils. We don't know that. But my point is, if in fact, say for example, Lot 1, it's a pretty small area up there, right? Whether or not it's likely that they can get a leach field that would work immediately behind the house. One, it's going to be in that drain, okay, in that surface drainage, and that's going to more than likely be a non-starter for the county because you don't like heavy volumes of surface water running across leach fields. That's just not something that is desirable, and most of the time the county would not permit it. So that might mean that you'd have to have your leach field further to the south on that lot. Well, further to the south is higher. So that means that you're going to have to pipe it, which means you're going to have a pump tank, so a septic tank, a pump tank, a supply line that goes down, goes underground all the way, and then comes to the surface, and then maybe your leach field is down to the south, okay? So these are all things that need to be thought about and need to be considered when we're talking about that easement, because if there is a permanent drainage easement there, then how are all these other things going to get done? And then you're going to have crossing easements, and all those things are going to have to be honored by folks who are living there, because 10 years from now, when Mr. and Mrs. Smith live there, the details about what's on their deed, all of those things, we know they're just going to get lost in the shuffle, right? And so they're going to have a swing set out there and a play set, and the dog's going to be running, and yada, yada, yada. And we don't know really what's going to go on in there, regardless of whether there's a permanent drainage easement. But really, the confluence of all these issues on a complicated site, I think, gives reason to just kind of pause on this and really think, is this something that is the kind of development that we need to move forward with? So probably more than you wanted to hear. Not sure it answers your question.
That helped me.
Will, but most of, and correct me if I'm wrong, most of the things that he's mentioned, such as stormwater plan, grading plan, and this might be something for staff, but these are things that we've already got in there as conditions, so these are things that come after this process, I've always thought.
Yes, ma'am. You're
Thank-
correct.
Okay. That's what I thought. We don't get them done beforehand,
Absolutely, and to that end, I totally agree and understand that's the process.
because then they wouldn't even get their permits if it does not perk.
Absolutely.
Even if they did off-site septic systems.
Yes, ma'am, exactly. And to that point, the difference in my mind in this case is that there are certain things that were asked for by the board at the last meeting, back on March 16th. Yeah.
19.
What did we
yeah,
ask
mi-
for?
yeah.
I'm
We
wondering,
asked
is it
for-
something we can even ask for?
Yeah, we asked for a lot of different calculations.
I don't,
But
maybe
can we
Mr.
do
Godwin
that?
can
Yes,
say
we
what
can.
was asked for, but it was a fairly significant list, because I thought, honestly, I got engaged shortly after that meeting, I think it was the 12th of April, and I was like, well, that's gonna be great. A lot of these questions that I already had kind of formulated in my mind about, well, what about all these things? I thought, well, we'll have some answers to those, and we can come in here a little bit more prepared to say, well, okay, well, here's the narrow band of our concerns, if we had any at that point. But none of the information ever materialized, so here we are 3 months later with yet a third site plan, and we still we're not any closer, at least as far as me and my client, to understanding what the final plan will look like. Again, I certainly respect and understand the process here.
And I will note, this is a separate case now, so this is not, so again, it's part of the reason we're allowing all this testimony is because it is a separately filed case. So if we do feel like we need additional information above and beyond any testimony that's been provided tonight, we can always ask for that again.
anything.
Anything you feel like you need?
Okay. I didn't understand that.
Any other questions of the gentleman?
With the calculations that, and studies that we discussed last time, would they not be required before they could get signed off with environmental and stormwater? Even if we went through this process, the information that we asked for last time, would that not be required prior to being signed off totally and allowed to construct?
Sorry about that.
I'm sorry.
No, sorry about
You're
that.
good. So certainly there would be, the burden is on the applicant to produce those engineering designs, and have done a study of the site, and it's got to be sufficient to conform to county stormwater ordinance, obviously.
So it's not required for this process.
That level of detail is not required at this stage, at the preliminary levels. What we do ask for is a stormwater statement. We have received a stormwater statement. I think that's been acknowledged, but to the extent to which what's maybe being asked for tonight is not required at this stage. And we do have staff in the Public Utilities Department which is qualified to evaluate that and basically checks and balances.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to be heard as it relates to this case? All right, we'll bring it back to staff.
Staff recommendation was denial due to 500 feet of driveway separation, lack of that, and a lack of the dedicated right-of-way meeting the standards for a major subdivision. It does appear that he might have addressed those. A comprehensive review hasn't been done, but the new map does appear that he has addressed those in his newest map.
Any questions of staff?
No, but I would like to go on record as stating that I have a concern that a proper review has not been done.
A proper what?
A proper review and approval has not been done. A comprehensive review has not been done of the latest plans that have been submitted.
Go ahead.
I'll say I like this set of plans better than the ones that were sent back in March, but like I said, my very main concern is the drainage easement and maintenance of the pipe for the lots, but then even if it's rerouted, what that is going to do to the surrounding property owners.
I agree.
That's just my main concern.
Yeah, when I look at the intent of the ordinance, is to ensure that subdivided lots or parcels can be used to safely build on without danger to the health, safety, and general welfare of the perspective of future owners in the county's community, and the subdivisions are provided with and provide for adequate and efficient access and coordination of streets, water, sewage, parks, schools, playgrounds, and other public requirements. I admittedly struggle mightily with this one. I think we've got an engineer who's done quite a bit of development plans in the county, testifying that the design will accommodate the subsurface and surface drainage. I think the drainage easements along the property line are an excellent addition to this and may be sufficient to move the stormwater that is sheet flowing across this land. I think associated with that is, and important, is the subsurface drainage, and I think it is incredibly important that that be
Addressed.
repaired, maintained, and protected, because it seems critical to the overall conveyance of water above and below ground on this site. So I've got one engineer that's saying that this subdivision is adequate for that, and I've got others saying that, well, there's a lot going on here and we don't have answers to all the questions, but also that some of the questions don't get answered until later in the process. I've got serious concerns about lots 1 through 4, maybe 5. And I think in this site, the devil is in the details. But it's hard for me to know even what details I need answers on, if you want me to be blunt about it. I feel like lots 6 through 10 are fine. But it appears to me that 1 through 4 is a bit like putting lipstick on a pig.
I agree.
My
So-
concern is the septics of, like I said, the future of the, and the well-being of those people of, you know, later on down the road with the drainage pipe and running water and septic and
I think it's going to
children
pose,
playing outside.
yeah, I think it's going to pose a problem to either the future owners or the properties that butt up to it.
And I don't have concerns about the stormwater generated because of this development. I feel like we've heard testimony, and we've heard testimony in the past, that residential developments do generate less stormwater than farm uses. To me, it is all about flow that is coming from off-site onto this parcel and to some degree generated on this parcel naturally, which will continue to take place post-development.
I have a question, or actually a statement. It's a question. This pipe that's been underground for 60, 70 years, there's obviously something wrong with this pipe, because as far back as 2013, it's been flooding. I thought one of these photos was from 2013, my front yard, from Amy McGlam.
That's surface,
That's
that's
surface
surface
water.
flooding.
Oh, so that has nothing to do with the pipe. Okay.
Well, you
See,
can,
I
can
had
get
my
back-
question, you answered it.
I mean, I went back on Google Earth to 1993, and you can see that swath of wet land just as
Well,
clear in
it's showing up even
1993
on
as
these
you can
maps.
now. That land has been wet for a long, long time.
Yeah,
Wonder why it's not in the wetlands, or,
I think, Mr. Chairman, years ago, that pipe was a farmer put that pipe in so he could farm that land. And I think that's the only use that pipe's ever been used for. It does not convey any surface. It picks up water that's in that field and drains it. It takes a while, I bet, but it'll drain that field so it can be farmed. That's the only thing, that's the only reason that pipe's there. What I'm struggling with myself, like yourself, is I would love to see that pipe go back in or be maintained on this property. Now, whether that's rerouted around the property, I mean, the pipe was there for the farmer. The farmer's not gonna be there anymore. So it doesn't really matter. But I feel that pipe is doing something for that surface drainage. I don't know where and I don't know when it gets into that pipe, but I think it's doing something. So I agree
Keeping
with,
that land dry.
yeah, I agree with you. That pipe needs to go back in. I don't know if it needs to go back in the swale it was in or around the outside. I don't know. I'm hoping that the engineers will figure that out.
That's where I would like more information.
Yeah.
Well, wouldn't that information come from when they go to stormwater and environmental?
Not if we ask for it.
Well, and stormwater, and maybe staff can help with this, stormwater is dealing with surface drainage. This is a subsurface drainage issue.
Yeah.
Okay.
That is wet land that is only made drier through the existence of that pipe.
Right.
Right.
And I'd struggle to, it's hard for me to feel like that land is going to be dry and suitable for a home site well into the future. So that's where I go back to the intent of that ordinance, that, you know, for the general welfare of future owners, and because of that pipe and everything that's going on there, you know, the efficient coordination of those issues seems to be lacking as it relates to this. Now,
Yeah, I mean, that's my question is like, should it, if you maintain the drainage, who's gonna maintain it and everything else? But then also, if you change the drainage, how is that gonna affect? So that's what I'm saying, like, if you go around the property line, that's where I feel like you need more information.
We need a study.
Well, I believe, I'm kind of leaning the other way where it's, you know, we do this every day. There's drainage coming across subdivisions in existing patterns today. The engineers are required to take care of it, hold that same pattern. And I feel the engineers will do that. They have to. How that affects that private property, I also have a problem, is that's a lot of water coming across there, and I know it's got to get handled. And I'm at the same place with you. I'm back and forth with this in my mind. I know the engineers are going to handle the surface water. I really like to know how it's going to affect them. I'd really like to see the calculations, but, you know, that's not my job. That's, the county's going to look at that when he makes his submittal.
That was my.
And whether that land's going to perk with that water on it.
Right.
I don't know if that land will even perk.
Right. But I do like this plan better than the one we had
I do
before.
too.
I think from a roadway and access standpoint, even though this does not, the staff has recommended denial, I think this is the
Better way to go.
the appropriate.
I do like the access points better.
And I do like the access point L9 and 10 versus 7 and 8 that we were first seeing with.
I agree.
And I do believe all this discussion I've heard about the adjacent or the adjacent stream is going to be just fine with the runoff that's going to come off this property. I don't see any additional CFS being added to this at all. This stream that's already in place. It all has to do with this existing drainage on
Yeah.
what we call stream 1, maybe, I guess.
That's my concern.
Madam Attorney, can you please remind me of our ability to add conditions to subdivision?
They would have to be consented upon by the applicant.
Mr. Chairman, when the easements go in, like we're talking about a 20-foot public easement down through here to handle this surface flow, who's the maintenance? Who does the maintenance on that?
That's my question.
So each one of those homeowners, those 5 or 6, would be the ones that have to maintain that. Or
Typically-
can't change it in any way, I know, but
Typically, you cut a swale down that,
Right.
down that property line, and it exists within that easement, but it's mowed and maintained
Right.
by the home. Which is gonna be in their best interest to do so, because there's a wall of water coming at them, and then they want that ditch there to,
Right. They're not allowed to change it anyway.
Can I ask one question? What's the width on that?
10 foot.
It said 20, didn't it?
It's 10-foot public drainage easement
Was it?
indicated on this. Hey, question for staff relative to stormwater. Considering that it seems like a significant portion of the stormwater issues on this land are coming from off-site, does our stormwater process take into account that off-site stormwater coming across the property and how that's diverted into drainage easements?
So I can say for certain that it's going to look at, it's definitely going to look at the pre and post development of this site and how that impacts downstream. I cannot say for definite it's going to look upstream. Common sense, especially in this situation, would probably tell you it should, but I can't say that it absolutely does. So I would defer that to our, we do not have representation from our stormwater division out of public utilities here tonight.
But it doesn't show an approaching volume at all, that he's got a handle coming onto the property?
I cannot tell you that for certain, one way or the other.
If I think about conditions that would make me feel more comfortable, one would relate to ensuring that the drainage easements and the swales within those drainage easements are sized to appropriately redirect the off-site surface flow, basically to help keep water from hitting the houses, and that the existing subsurface drainage pipe be repaired and included within, and they've shown it on their plat, and included within a permanent drainage easement. Something along those two lines would be what would make me feel more comfortable.
Are they both in that same easement? The pipe?
Well, that's the way I was originally assuming it, but I think that could be a question for the applicant if you.
And who did we say is going to maintain that pipe?
Each individual owner
Each
would have to.
individual owner,
Their little
Question.
little section.
10-foot section or whatever?
Yeah, once you go putting in a pipe, it's different. Because I can tell you, homeowner ain't gonna fix it.
No.
Right.
I'd be more comfortable tabling it.
So, and I'd ask council, our council to step in if I'm reading this, or misstating anything, but you have options this evening. So your duty here is to evaluate what's been presented. You can think of this hearing as with regard to this preliminary subdivision plan, as almost a discovery to some extent, because some things we don't know at this stage. But tonight you have your options here are you take action on the application before you in this preliminary plat as it's been presented with taking in consideration the testimony and evidence that's been presented by all parties. You can continue this hearing if need be. That's giving direction to the applicant to bring back any information you feel like you need. If that requires additional study or what have you, you can do that. Or you can continue just to continue the hearing instead of belaboring the point on this particular evening, because we're now an hour and 50 minutes into it, and this, we've got a long agenda. Don't want to push anything aside, but if we don't find we're taking any action this evening, I think we need to probably move the ball forward a little bit.
And if I could add, Mr. Letchworth, if you look at Section 14-176 of the ordinance, it talks about the consideration of the preliminary plat, and that, of course, the applicant has the burden of proof to establish that he's entitled to approval of the application. But if you look at that subsection B, it also talks about what your job is with regards to
your consideration, and essentially it says, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but essentially it says, you shall base your action on findings of conformity with the applicable regulations of the article, and you can take one of the following actions: approval subject to conditions, table to address deficiencies identified by the planning board, or denial, and that the planning board may impose reasonable conditions on its approval to ensure compliance with the applicable regulations. As you well know, oftentimes those conditions can be difficult to enforce when they're not extraordinarily specific.
Thank you. I do feel like if we are going to table this, we need to do so with specific direction on what additional information we feel like we need. Otherwise, we need to make a decision this evening, yea or nay.
I have a concern about tabling it.
Yep.
Because in March, we elected to table it and ask for specific information, and the response that we got was a withdrawn application.
Okay.
What were your conditions before?
What was the request that we didn't get answers to? Is that what you're asking?
No. The studies and flow rates and different things that have, my opinion is that's going to all be answered in the final.
And I agree with that.
And it was a significant.
I wouldn't know what they're talking about anyway on that stuff.
You fortunately got a couple engineers on the board that we can figure it out.
That's what hurts.
I think that was a fundamentally different design and more drastically changed the natural flow patterns of the land.
It did, and that's where that's where I'm struggling, because it's not my responsibility to ask. All the questions out there is stormwater, erosion control, septic tanks. I don't answer that stuff. You know, I look at what he has submitted for our approval, and I'm okay with it. With what I need to make my decision. I don't make the other decisions.
Right.
You designate that.
What were your conditions? That the pipe be repaired?
The two things that were on my mind, and I'm not necessarily submitting them as conditions, but the two conditions that came to mind for me were to ensure that the swales contained within the drainage easements were sized sufficiently to handle the off-site water coming onto this site. Again, and the reason for that is because, again, I think our stormwater ordinance primarily looks at the stormwater generated from the site, and I want to make sure that the sheet flow across this site is accommodated.
I don't know that.
The second is that because of how critical I believe that drainage pipe is to, the overall infiltration of this land, that it be repaired and placed within a permanent easement. Which, again, is consistent with what I'm assuming is consistent with what's shown on there, but the repair part is important.
But you can make it as an additional condition.
We would have to get the applicant to agree to
Like she said,
those.
be specific and spell out.
Can we ask that?
Sure. Would you agree to those two conditions, sir?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you, sir.
We've already discussed it previously. We'd be glad to do it.
Thanks, sir.
I make a motion we approve based on those two conditions you just verbalized.
With the inclusion of those two conditions.
The inclusion of those two conditions.
Okay. I have a motion for approval by Mr. Sasser with the addition of conditions that the drainage easements along the property lines be sized, and the swales within those be sized to accommodate the off-site stormwater traveling onto this site, and that the existing drainage pipe be repaired and included within a permanent easement. Do I have a second?
Correct.
I second.
I have Motion approved by Mr. Sasser, a second by Mr. Lovering. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
All right, we're going to do a show of hands. All those in favor say aye. Raise your right hand. Opposed? Okay, thank you. All right, we're going to take a 5-minute break. Yeah. I think I've given you more than what you need, but you got it.
I think this is what they're dealing with. They got a shallow layer surface. There's a piece of clay in there that's not water doing anything.
subdivision.
Steelbridge Road subdivision, owners Jimmy Dell. Developers RRT Development, surveyor Stocks Engineering. Is 3316 Steelbridge Road, just west of Cooper Branch Road in the Smithfield Township, served by Wilson's Mills Fire and Clayton Rescue. 43.87 acres, 28 lots proposed. Johnston County Public Water, individual septic. Traffic counts not available. This portion of Steelbridge Road does not appear on the comprehensive transportation plan as needing improvement. This parcel is within the environmentally sensitive district. However, no floodplain appears on the parcel. A reverse frontage buffer will be required for Lot 13 along Cooper Branch Road.
Okay. Reverse frontage buffers along Steelbridge as well?
Let me see.
Well, it's not really reverse.
No,
It'd be more side buffer.
Yeah. All those back up to residences, it looks like.
I was just thinking the ones at front Steelbridge.
No.
Maybe not. All right, any questions, staff? Thank you, sir. Who'd like to be heard on behalf of Steelbridge Road subdivision?
Good evening. Ethan Averitt representing Stocks Engineering and the developer, 801 East Washington Street, Nashville, North Carolina. As Todd mentioned, we're presenting 28 lots. Since we're in the environmentally sensitive district, these are all 40,000 square foot minimums. I did want to address the three things that planning brought up. First is, as you just mentioned, the reverse frontage buffer. There's already has been determined a blue line stream in that area, so all that would have to be wooded anyway, but we will add the full frontage buffer along that edge. A mail kiosk will be shown as always. And then the pond, the ownership of the pond, the staff had questions about, and I didn't have time to change the map, but we are actually just going to modify the lot lines so that the pond is fully in the HOA-owned open space. So everyone in the neighborhood will be able to access and, go use the pond as part of the HOA there.
Prepared.
Yeah. So I'd be glad to answer any other questions you have.
Hey, you knocked out two of my questions.
I'd say that was my
Yeah, I
question.
was the only one I had.
Where is the milk kiosk?
It's not shown on this map, but it'll likely be close to the pond since it's a large frontage with no lots
Perfect.
in front of it.
So the lot lines will be modified to encompass.
Correct. The lot.
So access to the full perimeter of the pond will be within the HOA?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
That's correct.
All right. Thanks, sir. Anyone else like to be heard as it relates to the subdivision?
I'm
sorry.
I've got one
My
more
bad.
question.
Yes,
I'm
no
sorry, and
problem.
I forgot to ask it.
I was too quick to withdraw.
The David Sutphen property that it sits right behind, it looks like 1, 2, and 3.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any type of buffer planned along the backs of those parcels? Because they're going to be
Correct.
butted up on 3 sides.
Not at the moment, but we'd be willing to add a buffer on the backs of lots 1 and 2 to
Okay.
shield that. Yes.
Any others? Thanks, sir. Anyone else like to be heard as it relates to Steelbridge Road subdivision? All right, seeing no one, bring it back to staff.
Staff recommendations, preliminary approval subject to the conditions and requirements in the staff report.
Can we add the buffer as a condition?
If you'd like, if any agrees, he agreed to it, so if you'd like.
Do we need to have as a condition about the pond being with HOA since that's not, or will that be a different?
I would make that a
Since
condition
that's not
and-
the lot, the map that we
And even
have.
the buffer she was just talking about.
Yeah, because he agreed to it, so
Yeah,
we would
he's
add
agreed
that as
to
a
it, so-
condition,
Yeah.
the buffer, and then,
Modify the lot line so that pond
Mhm.
sits entirely in the HOA. Yeah.
I'd also just like to say, on record, the enrollment and the capacity numbers for the area schools as well.
yeah, especially Cleveland High School.
Yes.
I make a motion to approve, with adding the condition of adding a buffer on the back of lots 1 and 2, and then making sure that the property lines are modified to have the pond contained within the HOA.
Second.
And
I'll
excluded.
second that.
All right, I got a Motion to approve by Ms. Holmes, a second by Ms. Howard. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, next on our agenda is Sersboro 1C.
Sersboro 1C, owner Joseph and Jaretta Van. Developer is Darlington Advisors LLC. Surveyor is Adams and Hodge Engineering. It's in the 600 block of Sersboro Road, just east of NC Highway 39 in the O'Neills Township, served by Corinth Holders Fire and Clayton Rescue. 35.26 acres, 36 lots proposed. Johnston County Public Water individual septic traffic count for Sersboro Road was 900 vehicles per day in 2021. This portion of Sersboro Road appears on the comprehensive transportation plan as an existing minor thoroughfare with adequate design capacity.
Any questions, staff? Thank you, sir. Who'd like to be heard on behalf of Sersboro 1C?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Donnie Adams, professional engineer with Adams and Hodge Engineering, 314 East Main Street in Clayton. Our firm's handling the planning and engineering on this project. As noted, this project is outside of the environmentally sensitive overlay district, so minimum lot size 30,000 square feet. We're proposing 36 lots. There is a riparian buffer stream that we've planned to cross it perpendicular, so we don't anticipate any issues or concerns about that. The CBU, the mailbox cluster unit, is up at the front, across the street from the lots 1 and 2, maybe front side of lot number 36. Outside of that, as typical, it's designed current to the standards, and then we'll meet the full construction standards with erosion control, stormwater, DOT. Those should we get approved here tonight. That being said, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have for me.
I'm assuming the hammerhead to the eastern property line is designed such that it could be extended onto the adjacent property, almost like a stub out.
That's correct. Yeah, there's no spike strip there. It is to the property line.
Is there a way to get a stub out somewhere in between there and the Sersboro without losing a lot? Here's what I'm getting at.
Okay. Yeah.
You got two thin properties, obviously look like they were previously subdivided. If that property to the east ever develops, I really don't want another driveway on Sersboro Road. So how can we best set this up for that adjacent property to be developed with one entrance and exit? It's hard for me to understand the true depth of that property, right? Is there another potential location for a stub in there somewhere, but I don't want to impact your lot count?
Okay.
Well, you wouldn't want one on the
And we're talking
top,
about
would you? Because there's subdivision up there.
Yeah, I'm talking about in maybe the vicinity 9 or 10 or 11, somewhere in there.
It doesn't jump right out. ESB.
And maybe it's just something to think about with the final.
Something to think about. Let me look at that, because looking at our soils information, I'm not looking at my topo. It may end up being in a draw right there, but
That's fine.
lots 10 and 11, there's bad soils on that lot line. There may be a possibility without losing something. Yeah. I'll honestly look at
I
it.
think that'll be just fine. If it's something we can, again, I'd just like to avoid
I
having
understand that.
another driveway on Sersboro in the future if we can help it. And then also, our ordinance does require a sign at any stub outs. I think I'm correct
Yes,
on that? All right, probably want to make sure that happens on this. That's all the questions I've got.
I would just be interested in a new highway count on Sersboro Road, as many subdivisions have been approved since this last traffic count.
It's a lot lower on the east side than it is the west side of 39, but it's growing.
Yeah.
Any anticipated roadway improvement?
Not
That's
anticipated.
what I was about to say.
It's pretty low on the east side of 39. Other questions? Thanks, sir.
Right, thank you.
Anyone else like to be heard as it relates to Sersboro 1C? All right, seeing none, bring it back to staff.
Staff recommendations, preliminary approval subject to the conditions and requirements in staff report.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve by Ms. Holmes, second by Mr. Sasser. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, Crocker Station.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
I need to be recused from this. I don't have an interest in this property, but the owner or developer is a client of mine.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
So do I need?
I guess somebody need to make a motion to recuse Ms. Howard.
I make a motion to approve.
I second.
All right, motion to recuse Ms. Howard by Ms. Davis, a second by Ms. Holmes. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you, ma'am.
Crocker Station owner Dorothy H. Creech, irrevocable trust. Developer is Michael Ford. Surveyor is Halsey Gilbert. It's 1347 Crocker Road and Old Sanders Road in Smithfield Township. Served by Brogdon Fire and Smithfield Rescue. It's 83.55 acres, 38 lots proposed. Johnston County Public Water, individual septic. Traffic count for these roads are not available. These portions of Crocker Road and Old Sanders Road do not appear on the comprehensive transportation plan as needing improvement. A reverse frontage buffer is required for lots backing up to Old Sanders Road for lot 27 backing up to Old Sanders Road. As in regards to direct driveway access on Crocker Road, if you'll see the paragraph that I talked about earlier, about 500 feet of separation being required, and the lots with 4 or more, developments with 4 or more lots having road frontage, and a waiver may be allowed if the planning board sees a hardship is created upon the property with no benefit in safety, welfare, and quality of life to the public.
Any questions this time? Thank you, sir. Who'd like to be heard on behalf of Crocker Station?
I had a nice and easy one for you last month. I come back and, well, told you I had a good one for you this month. Can you turn up the aerial and the county GIS? This piece is very unique just in the size, shape. It's one great big continuous parcel, with the exception of the bottom one. That, heck, you got one skinny piece where the home side is, and the only part that'll perk is basically where the house is and behind it and just to the left or to the west of the house. So the portion up front there is kind of wet. You got the field right here. That's the only portion that'll perk. Hence, we're trying to do large tracts, and I tried to get a shared driveway 500 foot away from the main, and it says that on the plat and shows it, just because I'm trying to do the 500 feet. The bottom track's fine. I'm not really worried too much about it, although it is on one subdivision sheet. But in all honesty, I could have done a series of minors and recombinations and done away with what we're fixing to discuss. I think it needs to be seen. Okay? The part where the house is, there's not a whole lot I can do with it. It's wet. It's kind of a shame to bring it from the back and try bringing a reverse road in. I can't really do a shared driveway between the lot on the where the home side is and one to the left, simply because there's a barn there. And it kind of limits my regards, but I do have a shared driveway for the other two. Those are the two 500-foot driveways. And the big track, if you'll scale down, this one will be a nice way to start. The soil scientists wanted me to bring the driveway all the way to the west. Well, my map goes north and south, so it'll be the north along the edge of 33 all the way out. And argued me down. I said, man, there ain't no way I'm going to stand in front of that planning board and give them another $100 driveway that don't meet it. So that's where I want to put the shared driveway coming down and just serves that. This is not a nice, great perking site that I gave you last time. This is one that's Kinda wet. I did talk to one gentleman, and one thing that me and him kinda agreed upon outside was the reverse frontage, putting a berm along the front of the road and making it like a landscape, kinda to hide it, instead of just a standard 30-foot. Not being the lots face the road, we really don't have to do it, but in all honesty, we got to do something with the topsoil. Just as well give the guy what he kinda seeks as a buffer.
And that would be where?
It'll be along the road on the, I call it the small section, on the other sheet, right?
Yeah, give me
Can we talk about lot numbers?
Yes, because I'm very
I'm lost
confused.
at where you're at.
Okay.
Oh, my goodness.
All right, talk about lot numbers, all right. The section here was
You need a
16,
copy?
30, 27, 26. I'm good, I got this right here. Putting berm along that frontage. And landscape, we got to do a 30-foot reverse frontage anyway along 27. I'm saying let's go ahead and do 31 and 16. That kind of gives him a buffer he seeks. Yes, ma'am. And lot numbers will be a good thing. And as you can see, 36, 35, if you go much further to the back towards lot 16, you're gonna need stilts to build a house. It's wet, and that's just why I've got it configured that way. The driveway cannot come out onto Old Sanders Road. It'd have to be a shared driveway out to the front.
All right, so we got a shared driveway between 35 and 36.
Yes, sir.
37's your existing house and barn, and 38's got a driveway.
38 will have to have a driveway, and I could probably skim it over as far to the right as I can.
And then
And then 1, 2, and 3 will have a driveway?
they're all shared by one, right?
Yeah, they're all shared by one.
Okay.
Okay.
And I've shown that on the plan, and I got 500 foot
No, I'm up here.
Yeah.
on that side of the road separation between them.
All right. And then your entrances are what they are. And then 32, 33, 34, and the piece retained by the owner all have that one 30-foot access.
Yes, sir. That way I don't, it's just, if I'd have done it, like I said, the soil scientists argue with me. I said, I'm not standing in front of those people with two driveways on that road.
All right, I'm following.
Caught up with you.
It is. Like I said, last time I had you a beautiful subdivision,
caught up
great
with you.
souls.
I'm ready to go now.
And this one is a little, and the whole reason is it's just they built roads, they're Carscott roads built after, and they just basically built where they had old paths. And it just split the land, and it was kept as one big parcel over the years.
Almost looks like some stained glass design. Some artwork. Some artwork going on.
Do I?
Some artwork.
Bless the surveyors.
Well, it's rough for us. It is sometimes not all our cookie cutters and nice and laid out like the last month one was. This one is one where you have to sit there and scratch your head. Well, I'm gonna have to ask for this and this and this. And
All right, so you said you were going to do the reverse buffer on
I can do.
18, 31, and 27,
Yes, ma'am.
and 35, or
Uh,
not 35?
yeah, 35 don't front the road,
I
but
said-
that
yeah.
it might catch a corner of that. I don't know exactly off the top of my head what that distance was. And that was something he asked me in the hallway. I said, well, we've got to do something with that topsoil. It makes sense. And I think he's here if he.
All right, any additional questions? Thank you, sir. Anyone else like to be heard as it relates to Crocker Station? Yes, sir. Okay, we'll make sure to get to you. Yes, sir. Give us your name and address.
I'm Virgil Yansom. I live at 952 Old Sanders Road. I live right across the road from Lot 27. I spoke with the engineer about berm or something, which he said they would do. But one major concern I have is traffic on this road. And when I walk across the road to my mailbox, I have to be very careful that I don't get run over. And because there's a curve there, and it's, people come around it flying. We're adding 17 or so lots there, 34 more cars typically, and all leaving at the same time. It's going to be tough. And when you go from there to Highway 70, making getting out of that in the mornings when you go to work is atrocious. So I would like to see some consideration given to something with traffic, be it turn lane or whatever.
Okay.
And thank you.
Thanks, sir. Any questions of the gentleman? Thanks, sir. Yes, ma'am. And thank you for your patience this evening.
Thank you for your patience for get up here.
No problem. Take your time.
Okay, thank you. My name is Jane Creech Hales, and I grew up on this land, and I'm kind of glad to hear him say that he's having problems with it. So, I own some of the property adjacent to on Crocker Landing, on Old Sanders and Crocker Roads. I grew up on this land, and I have been living there full-time since 1986. I am proud to be a fourth generation of the Creech family, living on the farm with 3 more generations on that farm. So we've got seven generations on that farm. My great-grandfather, John R. Creech, started this farm and started the Creech Mill, grinding both wheat and corn. In his obituary, it states that he owned a mill and perhaps had ground more wheat and corn than any other man in the county. And then my granddaddy, Albert Sidney Creech, was born in 1861 and was a young boy whenever the Union soldiers came through and stopped on the farm. And they wanted to use the products from the mill, the pork, the chickens, the beef, and cardons for their food. They told Granddaddy's father that if they do what they told them to do, it wouldn't hurt them, and they did not hurt them. So that road is still named Creech Mill Road today from then. In 1884, my grandfather married and moved to the western part of the farm. And on that farm there was a tract that we still call the Old Field. And Daddy said it was called that because when his daddy went there as a young boy, there was already an old log cabin that had almost rotted down. There was also Indian pottery along some of the small stream that flowed through the area. Many Indian narrowheads have been found on the farm, showing the Indian presence earlier. And this farmland could be classified as a 200-year-old family farm. In the early 1960s, the state wanted to pave this land, the road. It was a dirt road, and it had 2 90-degree curves on it. And those curves, they said they were going to straighten them out by going through the farm on a tract of land that was owned by my daddy and Mr. Hubert Daughtry. And Mr. Frank Holden, they enlisted his help, who was the county commissioner, and he came out and talked with the DMV to make other plans. He said that farmland was just too good to put a highway on. And so they saved that land, and I'm hoping we can save it again. I am encouraged by 2 of the goals of Envision 2040. Farmland is preserved, and the agriculture industry continues to thrive. And number 2, rural landscape is preserved along with features that make Johnston County special. Tonight we got 2 losses here. I may have lost the land of my past, and my children and grandchildren may have lost their dreams of the future. It is said that the last crop planted on a family farm or houses. Please help us preserve this land. Earlier this year, I was taken to the hospital, and on one of the members of the rescue squad was from Wayne County because we didn't have enough to fill in Johnston County that day. And he said it was some of the most beautiful area that he had ever seen. It was good to drive through the country and see farmland that is still used for farmland. And so I know that we need more residential area, but please, let's make a concentrated effort not to lose our very, very best land. And I've also got a caution on the entrance and the exit of Old Sanders Road is a dangerous location. That area already has heavy, fast traffic, and I'd like to see that. When it started, there was a road that said there hadn't been any, they didn't know, cars had not been counted. And so I'd like to just check that out. I'd like to talk to the gentleman later, if I may privately, about the buffer, because my land is adjoining that land. So I want to see how the buffer will help, what it'll do at my land.
You would need to address that now.
Well,
I don't want to take up more of the
Because
time.
here's her land right here, so that's why I was trying to make sure it's not land.
Yeah, we can, you can definitely discuss with him afterwards. You can ask him any questions
Okay.
that you want. We'll get any questions that you've got answered if you'd like for us
Okay.
to, so.
And I'd also like to address what Mr. Jansen said. When I was a little girl, this farm is on an inclining area. So when we have a heavy rain, the water goes down, and we have water standing. So I'd like to hear that addressed also.
Where do you typically have water standing?
The water is standing in the,
In the middle of that field.
on the highway. It's
Okay.
running off the highway into Mr. Jansen's yard.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. Anyone else like to be heard as it relates to Crocker Station? Yes, sir.
My name is Walter Daughtry. I live at 149 Elizabeth Road, which you don't see it on your maps here, but it comes right in behind. This subdivision is going to affect me greatly. All right, in the last few years, our neighborhood has changed simply for the fact that 70 Highway has been reworked. They put in the bridge at Les Collins's. They've cut off Creech Mill Road. It has doubled the traffic on Old Sanders, plus doubled the traffic on Crocker Road, because the traffic's having to go through Crocker Road to go to Wood Road to go to 70. And we're not talking about 55 miles an hour. We're talking about 65 and 70 miles an hour in the mornings going to work. The curve in front of Mr. Yanson's house is a very dangerous curve. Us getting in and out of there with farm equipment has become more difficult with time. You have a subdivision, another subdivision going in right across the road from this, folks, with 18 lots off Old Sanders that you need to look at. The entrance to it is going to be less than 1,000 feet to the entrance to the other one.
Tell me again how you were saying traffic's going out at 70s. Close off.
All right. When 70 Highway, they've cut off Creech Mill Road.
Right.
So that turned that traffic in toward us now. to get to 70 Highway. So we're having to use, and you've added more subdivisions in at Brogdon area, and all that traffic's coming out of those subdivisions up through us now.
Right.
It's either got to go Old Brogdon Road to Smithfield, or they cut through on Old Sanders to get out to 70.
So it's primarily driving more traffic on the Old Sanders.
Yes, 10 times more.
Gotcha.
And it's something we need to look into, folks, because you've got Water Edge subdivision coming off Old Sanders now. You're coming up with this other subdivision with 18 lots in it, and then you're looking at adding this one in with 38 more lots. So we're drastically increasing things. Just want you to consider all the options. I mean, you look at this one plat, it looks okay, but you've got to consider what's around this plat coming at it. I don't know how many lots you've approved down off Gravetown Road, but all that traffic's coming toward us now.
Well, we'll note the county is in the process of developing a comprehensive transportation plan, which is designed specifically to look at these issues. So regional traffic and how traffic's flowing now, and make recommendations.
Well, most of that's going on 70 Highway, folks. The back rural roads aren't catching that attention.
Well, that's the exact purpose of that plan, is to put attention on those roads. So keep an eye on the county's website. There's some opportunities for public input on that. And to make sure that issues like this are brought up and included in that plan. So
Well,
just a general aside there.
Okay. But, approving just this one subdivision adds that much more to us, is what happens. We need you to consider all that.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks, sir.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I appreciate that it's only 38 lots, whereas this subdivision could have been 121 lots.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Ben Daughtry, Colonel, retired Air Force Medical Service. I grew up on this property just across the road. I have a 65-acre tract there, directly across Crocker Road, as well as on Old Sanders Road. And I'm concerned about the density of this proposed subdivision and the lot size. It's just totally out of keeping with what has traditionally been a rural area for centuries. And this is going to begin to destroy that entirely. But then the density of those lots, just as my brother just said, of what that's going to do to traffic. I don't live in the area, unfortunately. I live elsewhere, but I have property there, and I'm concerned about for the future. And I would certainly appreciate it if the board would address the issue of the lot size, the density, and you've heard from the gentleman who prepared the plans. The area is so wet. It's just not going to handle. The lots are not large enough to handle the septic systems with the density that he's proposing. And I would encourage you to consider reducing it, but not less than 50%. To protect the future citizens that are going to make homes there and have their life there, because septic systems are a major issue. But I would certainly appreciate your consideration of the density and the lot size. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any questions, gentlemen?
Where's your 65 acres at? Off of Crocker Road?
Yeah.
Or, okay.
Yes.
Just
let's see. We have adjoining boundary lines with them, as well as directly across the road from them.
That's what I was trying to figure out, which one it was. Okay. I feel like there's so many.
I grew up on the property, but have not lived there for 50 years now.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
You said something just before he started speaking, but there was so much noise I couldn't hear. Do you remember what you said?
Yes, ma'am. This subdivision actually, with the way the county standards are, is the maximum density could have potentially been 121 lots, and it's only 38.
Anyone else like to be heard as it relates to this subdivision? Yes, sir.
I'll try and be brief.
No, you're fine.
Steve Smith, live at 65 Elizabeth Road. So I back up to this new subdivision. I have great concerns about some of the things that have been brought up. The density of the site, with how wet it is, the traffic on the infrastructure. People coming off Brogdon Road, which is probably the new Autobahn, coming through this area, going over to 70. I think the septic systems in there is going to be quite tight. I just built a house there on family property, and my septic system runs off diagonally across my almost 2 acres with that system and the reserve system for it. So I'm really concerned about what they're going to be doing with that system, with those lots. And the density for the area, it's been covered, the existing subdivision, the new one, and then this one plus the other areas where will be developed in the future. But also like to note that it is a long-term family farm, and those are getting rarer in this area. I applaud the planning department with their Envision 2040 effort. Just because it's not in place now doesn't mean we can't save farmland.
Thanks, sir. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Leslie Daughtry. My husband and I, Andy, live at 979 Old Sanders Road, and our residence adjoins the planned subdivision at Old Sanders and Crocker Road. Thanks to the board for allowing us to voice our concerns as we stand in opposition to the planned development. What we don't see on the plans provided and what we have questions about relates to septic system plans, stormwater runoff, retention ponds, turn lanes to enter into the planned neighborhood, sidewalks, and other amenities. Further, are there any plans for affordable housing? Most new homeowners are strapped to a $2,000 plus per month mortgage, and some are failing to maintain the mortgage. Currently, there are in excess of 260 active foreclosures in Johnston County, as it is known and seen that these quickly become abandoned and left in disrepair in these nice neighborhoods. Could we be approaching a cool down in the housing market? A quick search shows there are currently between 1,300 and 1,900 homes for sale in Johnston County, Zillow and Realtor.com respectively. Maybe it's time to give a pause and allow the practice of farming to continue for just a little while longer. To quickly close, I'd be a failure if I didn't stand up for the wildlife that inhabit the corner of this world. A brief list of regularly seen friends include deer and deer babies, gray squirrels, fox squirrels, raccoons, possums, fox and fox babies, red-headed woodpeckers, blue jays, bluebirds, cardinals, robins, finches, hummingbirds, owls, and occasionally eagles and the nocturnal flying squirrel, as well as a great variety of reptiles. Again, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I do have a concern with the amount of traffic that is on Old Sanders. I live at the corner of Old Sanders and Elizabeth, and pulling out to go to work every morning, you'll see where the curve is. There'll be no traffic coming. You pull out onto the road, there'll be somebody on your bumper. But again, thank you.
Any questions? Thank you, ma'am. All right, anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'm Sarah Williams. I own part of the land at 1415 Hill Road, live in Clayton. So I actually did not intend on speaking, so I don't have anything prepared like the other landowners. But I just want to bounce off of what they're saying. Even coming here tonight, I went and picked up my mom, who does live at 1415 Hill Road, and trying to pull out took 5 minutes because of the traffic. Hill Road backs up to this property. Hill Road turns into Old Sanders Road. We are already seeing an influx of traffic just coming down Hill Road because it connects Brogdon Road and 70, just with what's already being built. We're seeing the roads already being damaged. There are potholes at the corner of Hill Road and Old Sanders where it connects just from the recent traffic. Those potholes have developed in the past couple of months. So we're already seeing infrastructure issues with this. like she was saying, the wildlife with the timber deeds that are already happening, we're seeing that being pushed out. And then just the infrastructure in general is a question, a big question, with all of it. We just have a lot of concerns, and as they said, these are family farms. They've been in families forever. It's my great aunt's farm. It's now my mom's farm. It will be my children's farm. We want to keep as much farmland as possible. We don't want the farmers to pull out because all of their land is being sold for other things. But at the end of the day, I know that's not what you guys are here for. You're just trying to see if it's even an option. But the infrastructure, we want to see more of the infrastructure and how it's going to affect. The roads are already a problem. The traffic's already a problem. The speeding is already a problem. It's already becoming dangerous just trying to pull out in these areas with the curbs and everything else. And the damage is already being done to the roads.
Sure.
So.
Any questions? Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else? All right, I'll make a couple points before we come back to staff, just from a process standpoint, because I think it'll address some of the questions. So there's several things that happen after, if this plat is approved. It goes through a couple of reviews. One is NCDOT, where they will look at any particularly the access points to the subdivision. The developer will have to file a driveway permit, which triggers NCDOT review, and they'll look to see if there's any turn lanes needed. I'll mention again, the county is doing a comprehensive transportation plan. I would urge you to, again, go to the county's the planning department's website and look at how you can get involved in that. I can say with some certainty that this is an area that is being included in that plan, and these roads are being looked at in that plan, particularly because of the reconfiguration of 70 and a lot of the growth and development that's happening in this area. So please be involved in that plan. It's a complement to the land use plan. The land use plan is helping drive the recommendations in that study, so it is important to have good community involvement in it. From a stormwater standpoint, again, after if the preliminary plat is approved, after that happens stormwater review. So all the stormwater plans are developed and then reviewed again to ensure that post-development runoff is at the same level as intensity as current runoff. And then also the septic plan. Several of you mentioned septic. That goes to the county health department to ensure that all the septic systems are planned and designed appropriately. So there's a lot of things that I think address a lot of the concerns that y'all have expressed. As I mentioned prior to the beginning of this meeting, it's not the purview of this board to determine whether a subdivision is appropriate for an area. I think many of us on the board share your same concerns with the level of development we see in the county and farmland that's being converted into to developments. But again, that's not the purview of this board. This land is zoned for residential. The purview of this board is to determine, does it meet the codes and ordinances for this point in the process. So with that being said, we'll bring it back to staff.
And then can I say something else?
Sure. You can say anything you want.
I would also like to say, whenever you're looking around at the map, if your farm or if you are a landowner, as many of y'all have mentioned you are in this room, we all really appreciate you taking the time, especially tonight with it being almost 9 o'clock, to sit through this and to speak, because we do value your opinion and your insight on this. But if you do own property in Johnston County and want to keep it in farmland, I personally recommend you checking out the voluntary ag district, and what that does is that highlights your farm in yellow to make it noted that it is a working farm. The Johnston County Soil and Water Office here in Smithfield is a great resource. They actually hosted not long ago a land owner workshop of how to preserve your farmland here in Johnston County. That was free. So if you have any questions, and as you as landowners are wanting to protect your land for the next generation, I highly encourage you to contact the Johnston County Soil and Water Department as well as the Johnston County Cooperative Extension Department.
Well said. Thank you. All right.
Staff recommendation was denial due to the driveway separation and the direct driveways onto Crocker Road.
Sure.
For the developer.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So the driveway access that was mentioned for lots 1, 2, and 3, that does have the 500 minimum right there with the entrance for 4 through 16.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
It will have. I
It will?
promise you that, yes.
Okay.
I got a question with staff about, is that start at the edge of the right-of-way or center line, which either way I can move it to make it whatever it needs to be. Whatever
Okay.
staff says, we'll put it at that location.
And then I had another question.
Okay.
It was brought up that there was a subdivision going in across the street on Old Sanders Road. Would that be going, I just didn't know if the entrance for the 18 through 31 would actually align to make it an easier intersection to get in and out. But
I don't think that's the subdivision.
Okay.
It's not directly across the road. I think it's
Okay.
down the road. I think this gentleman here owns the land directly across the road from that.
Okay. I couldn't tell what was going on, so, okay.
I'm not sure where the
Okay.
subdivision is, Michelle.
Okay. That was just one of my questions.
I'm not doing that.
Any preliminary indications from DOT on any requirements?
No, sir. I was kinda wanting to get a answer on all the driveways and all before I start submitting all that.
Okay.
And that'll be handled through Steve Sanderson's office.
And it's looking like the portion retained by owner, the 22.93 acres is probably going to be too wet for future development.
It's not gonna be a subdivision. Worst case scenario, it'll be 2 10-acre tracts.
Okay, I was just trying to
It's-
think like the last subdivision.
We've had a
of-
soil scientist already on site.
Okay.
Otherwise, that's how I knew to put it together the way I did. And we've
Okay.
had a very intense soil survey done.
Okay.
Right now, it all depends on if we can find another perk site, Michelle.
Okay.
So worst case scenario, either way, the 10 acres are exempt. I'm trying to keep everything, I like to tell y'all the truth to the best of my knowledge. And like I said, I could have recombined it and minored it and got this darn thing to where we wouldn't even have any. But at the same time, I'm not doing everybody a good justice. And plus, my time's been limited lately too. So
Thanks, sir.
That was my question.
All right. You can come ask me real quick, and then we'll make sure to get you an answer. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, you best speak into the mic so we can get a recording on it.
My mother's land, which is, her name is Jane Hales, her property butts up to lot 25, and this is off of the Old Sanders Road. Her lot, this is her land right here. Lot 25, 24, 23, 22, and 21, I think it is.
Okay.
Is there going to be any kind of buffer between the property line and, will there be any buffer between these two, between those properties and her property?
Okay, and then I have a question too for you. Can you go pull back up GIS, Preston? So that looks like, is that landlocked? How does she access that?
Yeah, how do you access
How do you
that?
access that now?
Through her driveway. That,
Just south of that.
that first little, the green, like
Right
that.
here?
No, go down. Go down some more. Go to your right. That right there is her property also.
Okay.
So
Okay.
you have to go through her driveway to get to that land.
Okay, I just didn't know if you accessed that through those fields and you would need an access
No,
point, but you
so
don't. Okay.
We would love to access it a different way, but, but would there be any buffer between her property line? I'll turn it around this way so it looks easier for me. This is the back of the homes. And this would be her land here.
it all depends on the septics and all. I don't know where they're at in that area, but I mean, we can put a 20-foot landscape buffer if need be, if as long as it's not, how do you put this? I can put septic tanks right up to the easement. It's not an issue, but I can keep a house, and the county ordinances says that your accessory building's got to be 10 foot off of the property line anyway. So I mean, I can squeeze in a 20 foot if it's okay with the board, but I'd really have to look at the soils to let you know that. And I think the soils are up front on those.
It is, I will note, it is not required by the ordinance to have a buffer between like uses. So since they're both zoned agriculture residential, it's not required. So,
Okay.
I can see if
But
I
if-
can squeeze in.
If they are willing to, that's.
sure.
But I'd have to
bonus.
look at the soils.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm gonna be honest. But at the same time, I think the further you get back on those lots, and I didn't bring the soils notes with me, the further you get back, the wetter it gets, because it drops down into the low area on her lot already. And so I'm thinking the soils are middle to front, so it might not be a non-issue. But at least protect some of the trees along there.
But you're not committing to it tonight.
Yeah, I can say I can commit to it now.
I don't know that we would be in a position to make that a condition because it's not required, but
Yeah.
I think that's a conversation between y'all, so we appreciate that.
If I say I'm gonna do something, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate that.
Nice.
All right.
Thank you again.
Thank you, ma'am. All right. I'm ready to entertain a motion. Thank you.
May I speak just one more time, please?
We've closed the public hearing. We're going to do motions
This is
right
not pertaining to case. I just want to thank Ms. Davis for
Yep.
thanking us for being here, because I drove 300 miles to come sit here tonight.
Well, we thank you for being here too.
Yes.
So thank you, sir.
But my property is, the Daughtry family is trust. You make, that's probably what you see on the map.
Okay.
Thanks, sir.
Like I said, this could have been a lot more lots on this than there is.
Yeah, and I think developers made an effort to separate the driveways. The way I've calculated it, they're all right at 400 to 500 feet almost anyway, so I'm happy with that. I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, motion approved by Mr. Lovering, a second by Mr. Crenshaw. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, next is Parker Landing Phase 2. No, man, I don't think so.
Parker Landing Phase 2, June 2024. Owner and developer Axiom Holdings LLC. Surveyor Stocks Engineering. Location is Sweet Fern Lane off of NC Highway 96 North in the Wilders Township. Served by the Corinth Holders Fire and Clayton Rescue. It's 83.16 acres, 46 lots proposed. Johnston County Public Water, individual septic, traffic counts not available. This portion of Sweet Fern Lane does not appear on the comprehensive transportation plan as needing improvement. This parcel is within the environmentally sensitive area, however, no floodplain appears on the parcel. Per NCDOT, a left turn lane will be required on NC 96 turning onto Sweet Birch Lane. No lots shall be recorded in Phase 2 until existing stub of Sweet Fern is approved and dedicated with the other proposed streets with a letter stating that they meet NCDOT standards. Yeah, you'll remember this came and was approved by the board in March 19th of this year for 40 lots. They're coming back asking for 6 more. And I have included the original map with the other one so you can compare.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions of staff? All right, who'd like to be heard on behalf of Parker's Landing Phase 2?
Good evening. Ethan Averett, Stocks Engineering, 801 East Washington Street. As Todd just mentioned, this is the same piece that came before you and that was approved with 40 lots. As we got farther into soils evaluation, there was more area down to this western portion that was mowed and specifically evaluated by Dan Bliley. He found more suitable area for septic drain fields, and so we have come back with 6 additional lots. The other piece that I did want to mention that came up last meeting was the dedication of Sweet Birch Avenue and Yellowwood Avenue. There were some residents currently who wanted those to be turned over to DOT. We did submit the petition and found out that it has already been turned over, but it was just not showing up on the website as highlighted yet. But we have, I don't know if that's in your packet or not, but I sent that letter to Todd. Here you go.
Good. I know that was a lot of concern last time.
Oh, it's on the website
That's
now.
great.
Anyway,
Thank you.
I have a letter from Sam Longhorn saying that they were turned over Sweet Birch and Yellowwood Avenue. And then obviously the portion of Sweet Fern is not yet built, it's just a gravel
Thank you
stub.
for following up on that.
So,
Yes, thank you.
you're
Thank
welcome. The wetlands have been evaluated since the last time as well. They're specifically, they have been surveyed and shown on this map, as well as the stream. And buffer is shown. And any other questions, I'd be glad to answer.
You just said something, maybe I misheard it, that the DOT approved they're not paved, or one of them is not paved?
Sorry, Sweet Birch.
Sweet Fern.
Yeah, sorry, they're very close. Sweet Birch
okay.
is approved and turned over.
I'm
Sweet
getting old.
Fern stuff is
I
not.
heard sweet, and I went, wait, what?
Appreciate the level of detail on your site plan.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah,
Agreed.
it's, well done.
Well, Sweet Fern does not have enough residents for it to be turned over yet anyway, correct?
Correct, yeah. It's nothing there.
I
It's
was
just a-
scratching my head how
Yeah.
DOT had
I know,
approved a road
approved
that's
something that's
gravel.
not there.
I don't know.
I like this plan better than I like
Yeah.
the other one.
I do too.
I like how it's one continuous street.
Yeah.
I'm sure they like it too with a few more lots.
Yeah.
Any other questions, gentlemen? Thank you, sir. Anyone else like to be heard as it relates to Parker's Landing Phase 2? All right, bring it back to staff.
Staff recommendations, preliminary approval, subject to the conditions and requirements in the staff report.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion approved by Ms. Holmes, second by Mr. Sasser. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, now we'll move on to the rezoning portion of tonight's meeting. I will remind everyone that the cases heard by the board here during the rezoning portion will also be heard by the Board of County Commissioners at their September 3rd meeting. So if you are here for a rezoning case, please make sure you also show up there also here, but for Board of County Commissioners on September 3rd. As I mentioned, case 24-11 has been pulled. Our next two cases, 24-13, are just special use requests. We will open the public hearing, hear a presentation for the applicant and discussion with anyone else that has questions, but we will not take a vote on that. For all other cases, we serve as an advisory board to the Board of County Commissioners, and we will vote on those. So we will begin this evening with case 24-13.
Yes, sir. This is a petition for a special use at 6450 NC Highway 242 in the Meadow Township. Its owner is Gloria and Damian Herring. Applicant's Network Towers. It's for a wireless communication tower. Meadow Fire District and Benson Rescue Squad are the utilities and services. Existing and surrounding land uses are AR and used for those purposes. Traffic count for NC Highway 242 is 1,900 vehicles per day in 2021, and it appears as a major thoroughfare with adequate design capacity. This area is located within the designed agricultural area place type on the envisioned Johnston Comprehensive Land Use Plan. The county's technical consultant, Cityscape, has reviewed this request. If approved, the construction of the tower will have to adhere to all federal, state, and local regulations pertaining to construction and maintenance of telecommunications facilities and towers.
Thanks, sir. Any questions of staff? All right, who'd like to be heard on behalf of case 24-13? Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Anthony Bologna with Williams Mullen at 301 Fayetteville Drive, Fayetteville Street, Suite 1700, Raleigh, North Carolina 27601. I'm here on behalf of Network Towers 2 LLC. The application has been provided to you and deemed complete enough for presentation to you all. This is in order to provide better cell coverage for students, families, businesses, and tenants in the area. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay. Any questions of the gentleman? Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to be heard as it relates to case 24-13? All right. Bring it back to staff. Guess we'll just we'll close the public hearing on that one and move on to case 24-14.
Yes, sir. This is also a request for a special use at 13,600 block of NC Highway 42 East in the O'Neills Township. Owners Michael Hocutt, applicants Network Towers, and it's for a special use request is for a wireless communication tower. O'Neills Fire District, North Johnston Rescue Squad. Existing and surrounding land uses are agriculture, residential. Traffic count for NC Highway 42 East is 4,000 vehicles per day, and it appears on the comprehensive transportation plan as a major thoroughfare with adequate design capacity. It's located within an agricultural area place type on the envisioned Johnston plan. Cityscape has also reviewed this request.
Thanks, sir. Any questions of staff? All right. I'm assuming you're back up again.
Yes, sir. Would you like me to read my name and address in the record?
I think we got you for the record.
Generally, same report. The staff recommendation was approval and considered consonant with the comprehensive plan. This is in the northeasternmost part of the state, part of the county. The only difference here is that this is a 290-foot tower with a 4-foot lightning rod. Happy to answer any questions that you all might have.
Thanks, sir. Any questions?
Are both of these towers similar to what we saw last month with what was going on at Corinth, like those cell towers?
Yes, ma'am. These are self-support lattice towers.
Thanks, sir. Anyone else like to be heard as it relates to case 24-14?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll close the public hearing on that. Next on our agenda is case 24-15.
Yes, sir. This is a petition to rezone 5.08 acre tract located at 7390 NC Highway 231 in the O'Neills Township from agriculture residential to general business. Owner and applicant is Jose Fernando Hernandez. It's served by O'Neills Fire District Clayton Rescue. It's zoned AR and is used for those purposes, same with the surrounding land use. Traffic count for this portion of 231 is 800 vehicles per day. That was in 2021. It appears on the comprehensive transportation plan as an existing major thoroughfare with adequate design capacity. It's located in a designated rural living future land use place type on the Vision Johnston 2040 comprehensive land use plan. It's characterized by low density residential development. There were 10 notices sent out to adjacent property owners.
Do we have that printed, that site plan printed?
I'm not sure where.
The what? It was, no, it's not printed. It was,
Okay.
I included what he turned in with his application. That was not a requirement to turn it in with a straight rezoning.
Okay.
But I did turn it in as part of the application because it was turned into us.
All right, I didn't know if I was like missing.
Given that this one is requesting a straight rezoning to general business, can you give us a flavor of the land use types that would be allowed in general business?
It could be anything from stores to bars to anything general business related, car dealerships, anything such as that.
Okay.
And everything around the property is AR?
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions, staff? Thanks, sir. Who'd like to be heard on behalf of case 24-15? Yes, sir. Give us your name and address, please.
Hello, my name is Fernando Hernandez. My address is 3441 Wendell Road, Wendell, North Carolina. Me and my dad own HC Auto Towing and Services. This is an application to rezone it's actually rezoning our property so that we may use it for our towing services with a possible future auto sales at the little corner triangle at the top. We have we actually come from 400 David Road. I don't know if a couple of months back you remember us. We were the the properties that were on a subdivision and that we wanted its own general business.
In the very back.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we actually purchased this property on 231, which is a highway, because they told us it would have been better than if we actually tried to do it on a subdivision. You know, I included a site plan of what it's gonna be. It's pretty basic. It's got buffer all around the fenced area because of towing. You know, when you tow a vehicle from an accident or anything, it's got to be in an enclosed space. We're actually working, so if this goes through, we will finalize our application with the county and the state police to actually help them with their towing. Do you have any questions?
So help me understand the choice to ask for general business versus a special use type district that would limit it more to your specific uses.
So when I did the application, I originally was gonna do a special zoning, but when I was talking to them, they actually told me that I could do a zoning application, which would be easier. Because I included a site plan. They made me go through getting a site plan made for it for my special zoning permit. But then when I went to turn it in, they told me that it would have been, you know, that I have the possibility to rezone it for general business.
Let me touch on that just a little bit. It was a complaint, and he was receiving violations from our zoning enforcement officer. He had a certain amount of time to get it in. We met several times. With a conditional zoning, there's many things that have to be done as far as he has to set conditions, agree to them and everything. That wasn't getting done. He came on the day to submit it without anything else and wanted also to make sure that he wouldn't be fined further by our zoning enforcement officer. I told him that I would just have to talk with him about that. At that point, he just wanted to go ahead and go with a straight general business. Right.
Okay. All right, very good, thank you. Any other questions of the gentleman?
Is this business running 24/7?
No.
24?
No. We're gonna have a time. It could be whatever you guys, you know, normally it would be, I guess people start waking up at 7, so 8 to 5, you know, normal business
I
hours.
was just wondering, working with the police.
Yeah.
They're-
Oh, well,
they're gonna
that's
be-
a 24-hour call.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, so it's a 24-hour call. Normally, you know, it could stay loaded. Wherever I do need to pick it up, you know, the tow truck stays with me till I go back to the property.
Yeah, I will note that under general business rezoning, we do not have the ability to set conditions because it's not special use. Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
I do want to tell you that
Yes, sir.
there are multiple other car businesses on 231. There's one going towards Wendell, which is about 2 minutes from me, and there's one going up to Middlesex, which is 3 minutes. That one, the I-1.
Yeah, I'm trying to place.
And then the other one, I believe it's outside of
Since I drove it there.
Johnston County, but it is also
That's what it used to be.
a auto sale place.
Pretty sure I drove it today. Did drive it today.
That's 222 coming down to Kinley. 39 here. 39 is there. 222. Going down to Kinley. Is right.
Yeah, I'm pretty much
You
on the
were
outside of
there.
the county. I mean, barely there.
But eastern part of the county.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. Thanks, sir.
Mhm.
All right. Who else would like to be heard as it relates to case 24-15? I'm gonna let him go first, and I'll grab you in the back. Yes, sir.
My name's Chris Brackman. I live at 2109 Whitley Road, Middlesex. My property, my backyard butts up to his property. When he originally bought the property, when they were out surveying, I had came back from Oklahoma, and where I had been working temporarily, and talked to them, and he said originally they were going to be putting a home there. And I asked him, I said, well, you know how much your elevation drops and all. Because when you come off of 231, you come to where the field stops, and there's the Moccasin Creek, and then there's probably about 100-yard wide floodplain that goes through there. Then it transitions probably somewhere about 50 feet of elevation. And I had asked him about buying some of the property directly in behind me, and it didn't work out. But when my dad and I bought property out there a little over 30 years ago, we bought it out there because it was all for agriculture and for homes. And we've got our homes there, and we've been there for the better part of 30 years. And now we're finding out there's going to be a business put right directly behind us, and there's nothing but homes all around it. So I'm not understanding why.
So what I'm hearing you say is it's inconsistent with the surrounding land use.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. Any other questions, gentlemen? All right. Thanks, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you. I'll try to be respectful of everybody's time because I know you all have been here for a while. My name is Matthew Hasley. I live at 59 Thoroughbred Drive, which is off of Arabian in the preserve at Buckhorn, which is the subdivision adjacent or across the street from 231 of the property in question. A couple of things I just want to point out. I feel like we're pretty well represented from our neighborhood here tonight. You'll probably hear the same thing from several other folks, but the major concerns we have, one would be the traffic impact on a terrible sight line right now where 231 comes through. There's a dip right where that entrance to that property is. There's also a school bus stop there. Obviously the concern would be for children and for vehicles coming along the road with an increase in potential vehicle traffic during busing hours. That's definitely a concern. The other items that we're concerned about obviously is environmental impact of potentially salvage yard or junkyard or any type of auto shop mechanics. Majority of us are on private wells, so anything that would leach into the ground obviously would definitely impact our health. The property is less than a half a mile from the Flower Hill Nature Preserve, so the impacts there I would be concerned with. It's a very unique area. I'd hate to see something environmentally happen to that area. Additionally, I think it was noted that behind that is Moccasin Creek, which is a tributary that empties into Buckhorn Reservoir. So again, the environmental potential there. The other point I'll touch on, I'll turn it over to some other folks here, but obviously the financial impact. We've put a pretty good investment in putting our homes there, our homesteads there. When we bought the property, everything around there was agricultural, residential. I would completely understand if it was buyer beware, if that was business first. We should know that, but the impacts that this would have on our property values and consequently what I would expect to pay in property taxes because of a lower assessment, because of a lower house value. I just don't think that this property is the best selection for a business property directly across from this neighborhood. I'll turn it over to some other folks.
Well, I heard you say you're well represented from the neighborhood. Can I get a show of hands of folks that share the same concerns? Okay. So, noted on that. In the interest of time, if you do have something you want to share that's very different than that, happy to hear it, but the show of hands will suffice for me in terms of folks that agree with the points that you've raised. So, thanks, sir. Any questions, gentlemen? Thanks, sir. Anyone have anything different they want to share? Yes, sir.
My name is Kyle Ballard. I live at 7406, which is beside the property that we're talking about. The biggest problem I have with it is most of that land is flood line. There has been asphalt bought on that property and dumped beside trees and everything. As you know, asphalt is a petroleum product. The rain that we've had will wash that asphalt clean and will wash it into that creek. There's a porta-john down there. I have seen them take the water out of that creek and put it in that porta-john. myself. There is issues with, they're close to my house. I don't need the noise because the simple fact is I am the neighbor to that piece of property. They put a fence in, they pulled it all the way down to the creek, and it is fenced, but then probably 20 feet from the creek line, there's no fence there. There's deer that run through there. That's going to keep them from being able to go from one side of the property and everything. I have baby deer and full-grown adult deer that hibernate in my pasture, that hibernate on my backside of my land. They're there because I want to keep them there, keep them safe from being hunted, just for the simple fact is I like watching them eat and everything, to give them a chance. My biggest concern is because that water does go back in to the reservoir for us, that's going to be an issue with you putting cars in there with rainwater. You're going to get gas, you're going to get grease, you're going to get all kinds of stuff that's going to run in there. Not to mention the erosion that's going to come. It's going to flood my property. It's already, most of it's already floodplain anyways. And the way that land is laid out is from the road, it's banked up somewhat. As you go closer to the creek, it flattens out. And when it flattens out, where that creek is by their property, the bank is real low, so it's shallow there, so the water stands. When Matthew come through, I seen the water 2 foot deep there. It flooded that creek. So I know how bad that water will be if it floods back there. I know what's going to happen when them cars get wet. And it's just, to me, it's just going to do a lot of property damage. It's going to do a lot of damage as far as what's there already.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, sir. You got
Big thing, but I'm not going to say it. So
Good.
I live.
All right.
So I'm not only live in Buckhorn Preserve, but I'm the chairman of the HOA. I speak for literally every single owner there has strong opposition to this. Our home values range between $650,000 and over $1 million each, and our fear is a devaluation of that. Plus, you may or may not be aware, within Moccasin Creek in that flood shed, there is an endangered species of a spotted mussel, freshwater mussel.
The dwarf wedge mussel?
Excuse me?
The dwarf wedge mussel?
Thank you. So our fear is, further environmental impacts for the entire area, just as Matt, who's one of my neighbors, has spoken to. But I wanted to make it clear to you guys that the entire community, some of which were here but had to leave, and some couldn't make it, are all in unison to please oppose this.
Great. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right. Anyone else? Very quickly. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. We'll get you.
Sorry.
No, you're okay.
Hi, I'm Lucy Smith, address 16 Arabian Drive, Middlesex, North Carolina. My property butts against a little triangle, and I have no idea what they're putting out there, but we walk the property. Once you clear that up, there's no privacy. We have a pool out there. We got kids. I'm afraid that, there's going to be security issue. If they're going to have tow trucks going in and out of there, there's going to be lights right there. I can walk up my back steps and see, the woods. So I guess it was just the security and just trying to, you'll see the highway. I think it's just ridiculous.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mark Dakota, 7360 and C231, Grayson Properties. We're on the west side of the property in question.
Yes, sir.
My quick comment is looking at the map, their containment fence looks like it's about 30 feet from Moccasin Creek. So all those wrecked cars, all that's going to leach in.
Thanks, sir. All right. Anyone else? All right. Well, we're going to take it back to the applicant. We got a couple questions. Yeah, come on up here. I see you raising your hand. I want to give you an opportunity to respond briefly. Yes, sir.
All right, so their main concern is the creek, and in my site plan, I have 100 feet buffer from the creek.
Okay.
As my neighbor stated, we did fenced, all the area to the creek, because we were gonna plan to put in a house, and that specific neighbor, he feels like since he's been there longer, we've had issues with him, because when we bought the property, the realtor that sold it to us showed that it was just a strip of wooded, of where the trees are. And it turns out that half the field was ours as well, which he said that the whole field was his. We had to call the surveyor, he had to call the surveyor.
Okay, how does this relate to your specific request for rezoning?
No, I'm just stating that he's he's the one saying that, we dumped asphalt and stuff like that. We were gonna build a home on it, and there was, we were trying to level it out. It was crushed asphalt for the driveway. It was at the front. It was never taken all the way to the back. And like I said, I have a site plan of what I'm going to do. About her concern for the front triangle part, we will build a fence, 8 feet fence, to protect our stuff and her stuff. To the person at the very back, he's actually on my property. His corner's on my property, but we're not going to cross the creek because there's no way to cross in a creek. So that's why our site plan is this. It has nothing to do with the back portion of the property, because we have no way of crossing it, the creek.
Thanks, sir. Bring it back, staff.
Staff recommendation was denial due to inconsistency with the county's land use plan.
Due to the property being surrounded by homes and it being inconsistent with the county's land use plan, I make a motion to deny.
Was it? Second. Okay. Motion to deny on Ms. Holmes, second by Mr. Crenshaw. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, next on, that will go to the Board of County Commissioners as a recommendation for denial. I will remind everyone that that will be heard in this room at the September 3rd meeting. I believe that's a Tuesday, so that's different than their normal Monday meeting. So please make sure you put September 3rd on your agenda. We're going to take a 5-minute break, allow everyone to kind of clear out, and we'll return shortly with case 2416.
can actually read. Let's see here.
All right.
Let's read it.
Thanks, everyone, for the break there. We'll return with case 2416.
Yes, this is a conditional zoning request, petition to rezone 1.09 acre tract located at 873 Strickland's Crossroads Road in Bentonville Township from agriculture residential to general business conditional zoning. Owner is Parker and Harvey Anderson, applicant's Andy Anderson. Conditional zoning request is country/general store with future grill, agricultural equipment repair. Served by Strickland's Crossroads Fire and Benson Rescue. Its existing land use is zoned AR and is a vacant store right now. It was a non-conforming use back in the day, and it closed, so that's the reason he has to come back.
Okay, come back. Okay. But it was a store before?
It was a store originally. Surrounding land use is zoned AR and used for agriculture and residential purposes. Traffic count for this portion of Strickland's Crossroads Road is 1,000 vehicles per day in 2022. This portion of Strickland's Crossroads Road does not appear on the comprehensive transportation plan as needing improvement. It is in an agricultural area on the future land use place type on the county envisioned Johnston land use plan. Agricultural support uses, rural businesses, home-based businesses, and seasonal and temporary uses may be part of the mix of uses in this area. There were 5 notices sent out to adjacent property owners.
All right. Thanks, sir. Any questions of staff? All right, who'd like to be heard on behalf of case 2416? Thank you for your patience.
Hey, good evening. I am Katina Anderson. I'm Andy's wife and Parker and Harvey's mama. So they asked me to speak for them. So I'm here if y'all have any questions on what they want to do with this building that they have purchased. I grew up in Bentonville, so I want this to come back to life like it was a store when I was a little girl. So that's what they have plans for. And like I say, with future grill, hopefully, so we can feed some of the farmers out there.
Tell me about the equipment repair. What kind of equipment are you talking about? What's the repair going to consist
So
of?
Harvey works on mainly John Deere's,
Okay.
so farm equipment.
Okay. Tell me about the buildings that you've got, you know, sort of to store that equipment in, where that's going to take place, all that
So
stuff.
the store is, I don't know if you have a map that can see it, and then over to the right, or I'm sorry, to the left looking at the map, that is the shop.
Okay.
That was made a shop when it was built in the 70s, and in the late 70s, early 80s, it was used as like car repair.
Okay. Anything stored outside while it's waiting to be worked on? Tell me about how that's going to work.
There would probably be some tractors stored outside that, especially in the busy season, which is right now, with everybody having some issues. Most of his calls are farm calls, but if they have it where they can bring in for him to repair.
So if you're doing large tractors, you're probably going to them anyway instead of bringing them to you, right?
Do what?
You're going out to them to service them where they're at versus bringing them to you. Okay. Have you read the conditions that are included in the staff report? Do you agree to all the conditions that are in the staff report? Is there anything that you want to change? Because now's the time to change it. It's better to do it now than to do it later. For example, hours of operation. Are you comfortable with what, the 6 to 9,
Monday
6
through
a.m. to
Sunday.
9 p.m.?
Or do we need it a little bit later?
If you want to, I'm going to ask if anybody else wants to speak. If you need a minute to study those, that's fine.
They're on the screen up
There you go. Yep. Better to ask now than be working at 10 o'clock at night on something and somebody get mad at you. You fine? Okay.
You what?
Knocking over? All right, well, you got Sunday on there. If the tractor's broke down and you got to go work on it on a Sunday, you've got Sunday in there.
I'll be out in the truck anyway.
There you go. Okay. All right. Any other questions of that? Thank you so much. Anyone else like to be heard as it relates to 2416? All right, we'll bring it back to staff.
Staff recommendation was approval based on the consistency statement.
I make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion approved by Ms. Holmes, second by Ms. Howard. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That will go forward to the Board of County Commissioners as a recommendation for approval. Again, remind you, September, I think it's 3rd, was it?
That's correct.
Make sure you're back here September 3rd. And again, thanks for sticking with us
Yeah,
tonight.
thank you, guys.
How long has it been since the store was in operation? How long has it been since the store was in operation? 2019?
Did it have a restaurant in it? Steaks? Yes. Oh, God. Yeah, a highway patrolman used to run it.
He works here.
Yeah.
He gets
Dang.
down early.
Dang, yeah. Okay.
Well, they're going to get your steaks back.
Oh, yeah. Get my steaks back.
Or just a good old hot dog.
Yeah. Or a good biscuit in the
All of
morning.
that sounds real good right now.
Yeah, I'm serious. My arm sounds good right now. Not on my arm.
All right, 2417, Mr. Morrow.
This is a conditional zoning request, petition to rezone 3.35 acre tract located at 4033 Plainview Church Road in the Pleasant Grove Township from agricultural residential to general business conditional zoning. Owner is Shaw T. Fish Revocable Trust and Jancy F. Cahoon trustee. The applicant's Ronald S. Fish. Conditional zoning request is retail / display of storage buildings. It's served by 5210 Fire and Rescue. Existing land use is zoned AR and used for those purposes. Same with the surrounding land uses, except there is a AR conditional zoning for a cell tower in the area. Traffic count for this portion of NC Highway 210 is 8,800 vehicles per day in 2021, and for Plainview Church Road is 1,000 vehicles per day, and that was in 2019. 210 appears as an existing boulevard needing improvement, and Plainview Church Road does not appear on the comprehensive transportation plan as needing improvement. It's in a low-density residential future land use type on the envisioned Johnston land use plan. There were 5 notices sent out to adjacent property owners.
And it's completely surrounded by AR.
That's correct.
Thanks, sir. Any other questions, staff? All right, who'd like to be heard on behalf of case 2417?
This was used as a laydown yard for Johnston County building water lines or gas lines or something. Water lines. Gravel was there. He decided, hey, this would be a good place to put my display yard. And that's what he wants to do. I don't think he's opening an office on it. I think he's just mainly going to put the buildings down. People can call, he'll go out and show them, sell them, load them up and leave. He's got a lot of buffer off of 210 he's going to have to do, and buffer off Plainview. I think it's 50 and 70, isn't it, or is 210 greater? I think 210 is 100, ain't it?
210's 70 feet.
70 feet.
You should be saying that.
Okay.
What was there?
It's a laydown yard for when they put water lines down.
In other words, they had put up a fence there and kept
Well,
stuff
I
there.
don't think there's a fence there anymore.
Yeah, but there used to be probably. When
They had something
bunch of
around
pipe
it,
and stuff right
Okay,
there.
okay.
but I don't think it's there anymore.
Right.
Okay.
And
That picture.
he just basically wants to take the corner right there and put a few buildings down, show them, not have an office there, just people call and he go and sell them and they move them out. Won't be no septic, no. But it is outdoor storage and it
Is the
is,
driveway big enough to be able to get something to load it on and off and transport it out? Okay.
I see in his, I guess this might be for staff, but I see in his application, he does say no office, just sales calls, during daylight hours, no specific hours. Can we do a rezone, a conditional zoning, and put, and I'm fixing to probably answer my own question. I am the conditions. Okay.
Yeah, this one is good.
There is a mistake on the staff report, though, under recommendation, and there is not a it's not in violation. It's a continuing violation under recommendation.
It's not in violation. Okay, all right.
Somehow that snuck on there, on this one and the next one. So.
Okay, And the hours are 8 to 6, Monday to Saturday.
That was what was proposed by the applicant.
Proposed by the applicant.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, have you reviewed?
Nothing fancy on this one. It'll have to do some landscaping.
Do you see
It's-
the rest of those? Are you good?
Yeah, I need confirmation that you're good with all of them.
Yeah.
Please.
Hold on. Let me
You
read
probably see
this
them up
one.
there.
Yeah. Yeah, that should be, that's standard, not what I figured.
The only one, I did say that entrance would have to be onto
Plainview.
Plainview Church, because it'd be too dangerous on weekend.
Right. Yes.
I need to go with those hours.
He's gonna have to abide by them. That's-
Well, now's the
I
time
mean,
to
it-
change them if you want them changed.
I told him that when he came in and made the application.
Okay.
You can't be over there blanking and clanking after hours, people at home. I mean, that's, so the 8 to 6, I put down, he agreed to.
Okay, all right, very good.
All right.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions?
That's why I make them sign the application.
All right, appreciate you. Anyone else like to be heard as it relates to 2417? All right, bring it back to staff.
We have denial based on the inconsistency with the comprehensive land use plan, and it's in a low-density residential, and it's not near any activity node.
Seems to me that this is more reasonably compatible with surrounding farm and residential uses.
Yeah, I mean, there's,
And 210.
And 210.
Yeah, I agree.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion approved by Ms. Holmes, second by Ms. Davis. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that'll go forward to the Board of County Commissioners as a recommendation for approval. All right, last but not least, 2418.
Yes, sir. This is less than, it's about a tenth of a mile from the one we just heard. Conditional zoning case 24-18, petition to rezone 8 acres of a 34.12 acre tract located at 17343 NC Highway 210 in Pleasant Grove Township from AR to general business conditional zoning. Owner is Dan Seth LLC. It's applicant's Dan Beauchamp, and it's for a indoor storage is the request. 5210 Fire and Rescue, zoned agriculture residential and used for those purposes. Surrounding land uses for this one is zoned AR, also zoned AR, conditional zoning for a cell tower, and also a Duke Energy substation, and zoned I2 heavy industrial special use district, and used as a solar farm is in the area also. Traffic count for this portion of NC 210 is 8,800 vehicles per day in 2021. It appears on the comprehensive transportation boulevard, or transportation plan as an existing boulevard needing improvement. It's on in a low density residential also. There were 6 notices sent out, and under the staff recommendation, that last part of that needs to be wiped out too.
So there is the recommendation for denial based
But
on
not,
consistency,
yeah,
but
there
not
is
the-
no violation on the property.
All right, very good. Thank you. Let's see. 210 and Andrew. All right, any questions of staff? Thank you, sir. Who'd like to be heard on behalf of case 2418? On behalf of, yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'll thank you too for patience.
I know, I understand. It was an interesting meeting today. Basically, we own this land. It's, we've tried to find some use for it. We did a soils test. We did a wetland delineation, and there's some limitations for this land. We took that information to a local engineering company, and that was their recommendation to build a storage facility. The first 6 or 8 acres there next to 210, it's not very well done. It's not to say it's not 100% perkable, but there's very little area that's suitable for a septic. There is enough septic, they said enough area where you could put a small office, meaning 2 bathrooms, one for customers and one for the office personnel. So that was basically our motivation. I would have much preferred the land be much better quality and we could be putting subdivisions and houses in. But unfortunately, that's not what we're working with. There is water close by, so we can tap into that. And that's our motivation. The area is relatively, I wouldn't say undeveloped, but there's not a lot of housing. There's housing to the east, there's housing to the west, there's some housing units to the north, but there's nobody other than there's a church across the street. They're the only area close to us that actually can see the property. But we are kind of sensitive to the neighbors. We would like very much to put a buffer. We've already agreed to put a 20-foot buffer all around the property as much as possible. And I think a lot of storage units get maybe a bad reputation for not being, attractive, but we're going to try to do a better job and buy, the units we want to put in are going to be a little more architecturally pleasing. At least I hope that's what we're going to be. And that's kind of my pitch. Do you have any other questions for me?
I'm assuming from a clearing standpoint, you're really only going to clear what you needed for the development.
Oh, absolutely.
So there's going to be natural
Yes.
vegetative buffer around it already.
That's correct.
From an entranceway standpoint, how does that relate to the power lines that come across to?
Right now, we're going to try to go in between the power lines with the entrance road.
Okay, because it looks like it's almost right there where they cross.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You have an office there with the units that someone is going to be stationed at during working hours?
Yes.
Yeah, it's proposed.
Have you read and agreed to all the conditions in the staff report?
The report that I...
Yeah, we'll put them on the screen. Well, yeah, look at them there. I'll make sure.
Yeah.
So that will not be a 24/7 access?
No, we do not want 24/7.
Okay.
Because the roads are going to be permeable, I don't think it's safe to be loading and unloading equipment or trucks and when it's dark. So my hours would actually be a little less than that in terms of, I think around 7 or 8 o'clock would be the maximum.
Okay.
In terms of daylight. I wanted to keep it in the daylight.
What if I just need to go get a lamp out of my storage room?
You better
10
do it before.
You better do it before 10 o'clock.
Then we hope to have the doors locked, a system where the doors will be locked, they won't be allowed to enter.
Any other questions, gentlemen? Yeah, I do need confirmation you agree to those.
Yeah. I agree.
Okay, thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to be heard as it relates to 2418? Yes, ma'am. You've waited this long. We'll give you the time you need.
Yeah, we're one of the few people that are in the neighborhood. So our property, I'm Catherine Cotton.
Yes, ma'am.
And our property is
And you're at-
17301.
You were getting to it. I'm sorry, I was cutting you off. My bad.
17301, and then just up from that, 17191. So they're adjacent. They're connecting to each other. And I don't know that we're saying yay or nay.
Sure.
But we have concerns about the traffic, just because the 21 car count is, I think, really low compared to what it is now, and the speeds at which they move, and the location where that is, which is down sort of between two hills. And I'm glad that you mentioned putting a good buffer around so that people don't wander out into the woods and onto the other property, which people tend to do.
Well, while you're at that, a fence would be around, correct?
Yes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it
Yeah, it would be
completely
fenced in.
fenced in
It would be
too.
completely fenced
Yes.
in. Okay. And then I'm assuming there'll be bright lights over there during.
So we do have, just so you're aware, from a condition standpoint, and that's why I asked the question about the existing vegetation remaining, because that can count as the buffer, but it does require buffer around all of the lot lines.
Okay.
This calls for a Class B, which is 2 large trees, 3 small trees, and 9 shrubs every 100 linear feet. So,
Oh, I love that there's
so less than every 10 feet, there's going to be buffer, and unless it's the existing vegetation. And that will be outside of any of the fence. So a fence is also required.
Okay.
And the light, oh, you mentioned
Yeah,
lighting.
exterior
lighting. Any exterior lighting is directed towards the buildings, and to minimize light exposure to the street. So that's also a condition.
Okay. So those were our concerns. The traffic in particular, I think, could be a little bit dangerous. But
Do we have other things we want to mention or ask?
Sure. And so on the traffic, it will require an NCDOT driveway permit, so it will go to them for review, and any turn lanes or anything of that nature will be required by NCDOT, if they decide to require it.
Okay.
That'll be their purview. Yes, ma'am. Give us your name and address.
Bennett Johnston, I live at 620 Sweetbriar Road in Anger.
Yes, ma'am.
And my concern, this will butt straight up to our property at 17301.
Yes, ma'am.
And I mean, because they've been out there logging, and if it's gonna go where they're logging at, there's not any way they're gonna keep those lights from shining directly into the house there. I mean, there's no way to keep the lighting from shining into the residential house. Because we're right there where the logs are being logged.
Okay.
So, I mean, it will definitely impact the quality of life in that house.
Okay.
On that property, the quality of life on that property will not be the same. You won't be in your residential anymore. You'll be living in a fishbowl.
Okay.
And also, as you were talking, I understand that you said NCDOT will be involved.
Yes, ma'am.
But I come down that road, and as you come straight down Black Creek Hill, what you do is you land at, and you kind of slide down through Black Creek, which is this property backs it right to Black Creek. And I don't know how anybody is going to stop people from running into you as you try to turn into that property either way, because it's bad enough trying to get into the church.
Okay. That's something NCDOT will look at.
I understand that. I'm just letting you know.
Okay. No, I appreciate
In
that.
case you hear of accidents.
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
But that does bother me. I don't see how the living in that house you can have any quality of life with all the lighting around there that it's going to be required for a storage place. Because if I have stuff in a storage building, I want it well lighted. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other questions? Bring it back to staff.
Staff recommendation was denial based on the inconsistency with the comprehensive land use plan.
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second. Then I have a question.
A motion to approve by Mr. Sasser, a second by Ms. Howard. I'll let you ask you a question. Would you like a vote first, or you want a question?
I want my question.
Okay, go
Okay, but I knew since you had a first, you had to get a second to discuss, I thought. But maybe I'm wrong.
Go ahead.
You're right. Yeah, correct. Okay.
You're right.
Is there much of this in the flood zone? Todd, I'm looking at you.
Oh, no, I'm looking at the.
I did like this, Todd.
I'm waiting for him to turn
I'm
on
looking
the.
at Raston, and I'm then thinking, now I meant to look at Todd. Okay. There's what I was looking. Whereabouts is the property?
You can see that's the easement there, the two red lines.
Easement for the power lines.
And we're gonna be on the left and the right of the easement.
Okay.
We out of the flood zone.
Okay. Okay.
How
Yes, it did. Thank you.
How he's building anything.
Yeah,
Okay, now I'm fine.
I don't know how that works.
He can't build.
That's my question.
He can't build underneath that easement. Or
Well, you can
under that easement.
put the road or driveway.
You can't
or-
put buildings in there.
No.
And you gotta have it approved to put a road in there.
You can put parking or a road under a
Yeah.
power line.
If it's approved by them, yeah,
By who?
the power company,
Yeah, that's a utility easement.
yeah, it's utility. Anyway. It looks like he goes right.
All right, I got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we'll show a show of hands. Those in favor say aye. Raise your right hand. Opposed?
Count, 1, 2, 3, 4.
It's late. All right. Did you get that?
Yeah.
Get that, Isaac? Okay.
Yeah, E3, okay.
Okay, so that'll go forward as a recommendation for approval, 4-3. Okay.
Then we got a couple of,
Written decisions.
yeah, and
I was close.
everybody besides Wilbur and
Thank you.
Hey, we call about 48 hours, right?
You're right.
Oh, we don't have to sign.
All right, I go. First I got is Michael Hose at Little River. Make sure I get my voices right.
Is it approved? Or was it approved?
Approving, yes, ma'am.
I make a motion to approve the written decision.
Second.
Second. Or, yeah.
All right, motion to approve by Ms. Holmes, second by Mr. Crenshaw. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 16. All right, second we'll do Turlington Tract.
Heard of that one.
Okay. I make a motion to approve the written decision.
Second.
Motion approved by Ms. Holmes, second by Mr. Sasser. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And we'll do Big Pine 2. Approved.
I make a motion to approve the written decision on that
Second.
one as well.
All right, I got a motion to approve by Ms. Holmes. Who's second?
Debbie.
Ms. Howard. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. I think that's got you. Anything else?
Got 27 more?
Thank y'all very much. We appreciate it.
Do we need a motion to adjourn?
Second.
I don't think so. Sure.
I made the motion, David.
All right, we got a motion and a second to adjourn. If there's anybody that votes against that one, I can't help you.